to India and Asia, and good evening to Australia. Hope everybody is doing well this morning, and welcome to day 4 of the Deafblind International webinar. My name is Walter Wittich. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the chair of the Deafblind International Research Network, and I'm your host this week, and we'll get started right away. First by thanking our financial sponsors for this week, Deafblind International itself, as well as the Quebec Vision Research Network and TANE, Schweizerische Stiftung für Taubblinde in Switzerland, both of whom have contributed to our international sign language interpreters that you can see in one of the screens. I also want to thank the members of the organizing and the scientific committee, all of which are members that are working as volunteers to put this event together. And that includes Frank Kat, the president of DbI at St. Lucas in the Netherlands, Mirko Bauer at TANE in Switzerland, Jude Nicholas at Statped Haukeland University Hospital in Bergen, Norway, Saskia Damen at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, Michelle Borten at Sensity in Ontario, Canada, and myself in Montreal, Canada. I want to give a general thank you to all of the presentations this week, all the people that have donated their time and their knowledge. We have had over 3,700 registrations. This translates into roughly 400 people that are attending our seminar this week, and it's one of the largest events that Deafblind International has ever organized. So we thank you all for participating. Now, a little bit of maintenance and house cleaning for our session today. I want to remind you that our session is being recorded, which means hopefully in a few days, the recording of each day is available on the website of Deafblind International. So in case you miss anything, you can always go back and have another look. It's a webinar. We're still learning. There's some things that are bound to go a little wonky. That's okay. We're dealing with it as we go along. So don't worry about it. We tried our best for accessibility, which includes our interpreters today for the international sign language, but we were unable to provide you with live captioning as we did not find enough money or volunteers. But we're working on that for next time. Big thank you already to our interpreters today, specifically Rob, and he will be joined later by a colleague. I don't know yet who, but there will be a second one as well. It is because of our interpreters that I am watching the time, because they earn their 15-minute break in between their sessions. And so I will ask all our speakers to always respect their 45-minute limit. In case you would like to access a larger image of the interpreter, in the top right corner of your screen, in the speaker view, there's an option for sharing your screen where you can make the image of the interpreter larger, if that helps you. For our general rules of engagement today, you will see that all people participating have been muted and we have turned off your cameras. That is so we can focus on our presenters and their content. If you are new to Zoom, there are some Zoom instructions that you can find on the website of Deafblind International in case you would like some additional detail. You will see that most of our presentations have 2 presenters, a primary and a secondary presenter. And the reason we have done this is to ask people to engage with our speakers by using the chat option. So I ask you to use the chat option to comment and to ask questions at any time, because the second speaker always has one eye on those comments in order to prepare good questions and think about good answers. For those of you who use social media, we encourage you to let the world know about us, and specifically if you're on Twitter, please feel free to use the hashtag DbI webinar or tag at DbI_connect if you want to let the world know about Deafblind International on the web. All right, so much for our mini intro this morning. And now I'm going to hand things over to our very first speaker team. We are joined by Ines Weber and Vikram Shultari, who are going to talk about conducting research in a time of Corona. I am very interested in this presentation because my postdoctoral fellow also had to adjust his work quite a bit. So we likely have much to learn from each other. Are you guys there? Are you ready to take charge? There, I see a camera. Hello, Ines.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. So you have access to the screen. Vikram, good morning, good afternoon, and it's all yours.
Good morning, Walter.
Good morning, everybody. So today we're presenting our webinar for research in times of Corona. My name is Ines, and my co-presenter today is Vikram.
Hello.
And we'd like to discuss to you a bit about both of our research projects, which took part in the context of the Master's Research Program, Communication and Deafblindness at the University of Groningen, and how we or our research projects were affected by the current situation with COVID-19. As you can see, we've got two special, well, how can we say, not visitors, but we've got two special guests with us. It's Philip and Lucas. They're both students of Vikram, and they're both in Hanover with Vikram in the same room, but you will get introduced to them later on. For now, we will start with the PowerPoint presentation, and I will just share my screen with you now. There we are. There we are. So I'll just start with a short introduction of myself so you know who's talking to you. So my name's Ines. As I said before, I've studied special educational needs at the University of Heidelberg, Germany. And after I finished my examinations, I started to study communication and deafblindness at the University of Groningen. Also, I'm working at the institution Stiftung St. Franziskus Heiligenbronn in Heiligenbronn, well, Heidelberg, Germany. And I'm working in the counseling service for children and adolescents with deafblindness. Also, I'm a research assistant at the University of Education in Heidelberg. So in my prior studies, I've been studying special needs education, and the focus was on hearing impairment. So the subject of hearing impairment was always of interest of me, and it always fascinated me. So with the studies of communication and deafblindness, I thought an interesting topic for me would be the assessment of the functional hearing of children with deafblindness and additional complex disabilities. And with this background, I started my studies. And I will just go today through with you what was the main aim of my research projects, which methods did I use, and was my study affected by COVID or not. The main aim of the research was to get insight in how we can assess and evaluate the functional hearing of children with deafblindness and additional complex needs. Also, and this was the main aim, it was the aim to see how can we adapt the physical and social environment of these children, and how can we additionally supply support by technical aids in order to improve the quality of life, and then to fulfill their social, emotional, communicative, and basic needs of security. So methodology-wise, I've had like a triangulation with two methods, which was the first method was a literature review. This is basically an illustration and synthesis of a cross-section of various topics. And to have a comprehensive overview on what we already know and what is the current knowledge about the assessment of children or individuals with deafblindness, with three main areas I reviewed. It was the general assessment of individuals with deafblindness. It was the assessment of functional hearing. And this is quite an alternative and innovative approach. It was the evaluation of the functional hearing through smartphone and tablet-based applications. So it was the literature part, and the second part was a focus group, an expert hearing. I had 8 international experts taking part in this focus group. I have to say it was an online focus group, as we're doing it today via Zoom. And this focus group is to gather specific knowledge on assessment, and more specifically assessment of the functional hearing, because we all want, or I wanted to see how can I profit my work from the knowledge of others and from the knowledge of experts. So we had this discussion on this assessment, and also the discussion on digital-based procedures to evaluate functional hearing. This is a quite new approach, and it's usually only done with adults without additional disabilities, so only hearing impaired adults. And there has been no studies up to now with people with deafblindness and the use of digital-based procedures. Today, I'm not going to discuss overall results of my thesis. This is not the topic, but in overall, the conclusion was that functional hearing can only be assessed very flexible, very individually, and it's an ongoing process over a long period of time, and it's always tailored to the needs of the child. So this is the overall conclusion. However, I think that the use of digital-based procedures, such over smartphones or tablets, could be something of the future, and there's highly recommendations that we should actually look more into this. So now, why am I doing this webinar today? There's some implications for the research in times of Corona. From my case, and now from my experience, I would just give some pros and cons of literature review and online focus group. Obviously, I have not been affected that much by the COVID-19 situation. However, I think that the methodologies I used, and also some others, I guess, are very helpful to conduct research, although we're restricted and although we're not allowed to be close to each other, but it's still possible to do research. So literature reviews are always a really good method to give a summary or to give like a picture of the present state of knowledge. And we can either go for like a small sub area and then dig really deep into that sub area for assessment, for example, assessment of functional hearing, instead of just have like a broad overview so we can specify. Also, it's like an interdisciplinary approach, because we can pick different themes of different areas and disciplines. And we can collect from a broad range of resources, so books, articles, online journals. However, the access to the literature or to special sources is always limited, and there's danger to overlook important literature. For the online focus group now, it was very interesting because actually the situation with COVID-19 was good in some way, as most of the participants were able to participate from home, or some have already started working again. It has been absolutely brilliant to connect to national and international colleagues and to actually collaborate with those, to exchange practical and theoretical knowledge, and to get into a broad discussion. I think that via Zoom, as we're doing it today, or Skype or Microsoft Teams or other platforms, there's like a really easy access to digital platforms. However, and we have just been through this yesterday with Vikram and the two guests, there are technical difficulties. For example, you need a webcam, you need a microphone, you need browser configurations. So what is the recommendation? Test runs. Test runs is the optimum. And also important is to previously schedule more time to not run out of time. So as you can see, my research was not affected that much by COVID. However, I think that both literature reviews and online focus groups are a great way to do research, even in times of Corona, because you're not bound, for example, to have participants and to meet participants. However, my colleague Vikram, he was affected, let's say, quite a lot by COVID-19. So I'm thank you for now for your interest and attention, but I will now hand it over to Vikram. I will stop my presentation and give the word to Vikram.
Thank you, Ines. I will turn on my screen sharing here. Just a moment. Just like Ines said, there is always technical difficulties. Now I can't find my screen share anymore. Sorry. So.
Vikram, it should be at the bottom of your screen on your toolbar.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vikram, and to my left, you can see there's Lucas, and to my right here is Philip. These are two of my co-presenters today, and team of my research is that my presentation today is like we were affected severely because of Corona in my research. But I think it's just to think in possibilities. There's ways you can still continue your research, and that's what I'm going to tell you guys about today. So as you see, this is my research title before this Corona crisis, and I wanted to connect youth and adults with acquired deafblindness and do a kind of like an action research study and find out what insights we can gain from this collaboration between them. And of course, as you know, that it's not allowed anymore for youths and adults to mix. Whereas this is Lucas. He is a student in our institute here, and Philip too, and they both were really involved from the beginning of this whole process, and that's why I got today both of them to be there here with me. And Lucas on my left is look for a better word, is full deafblind, and Philip has residual vision. And I have two other participant adults, and one of them is also a full deafblind adult living here, and another adult with vision in one eye. So a little bit about myself. I come from India. I did not study in this field of deafblindness. I just landed somehow here in this field. I studied finance in London, and this is completely different for me. And since last 3 years, I've been working here in Deutsches Blindwerk, which is an institute here in Hanover, in north of Germany. And I wanted to gain more like a theoretical groundwork, like about this whole field. And I thought I need to gain some knowledge before I can really develop myself in this field. And therefore, I started studying in this course in Groningen, in the Master's for Communication and Deafblindness. And this is where my research started over here in this course. And I have been trying to adjust to this crisis since then, to this Corona crisis. This is a little like a view, so you guys can get a view of our settings where we are in my research. On the left is our institute in Hanover. On the right is this in Fishbeck, and it's like we have one in the city and one outside. And the left is mainly where all the youngsters, all the school children, let's say kids, are there, and a little bit of adults. And on the right is a facility just for adults. It's a residential facility. And my idea was to connect all of these together and gain some insights. Yeah, and but like from the starting, it was really difficult to connect, because you can't just say we're going to start our research and recruit adults. So that's where my co-presenters Lucas and Philip helped. They started recruiting the participants for me. So they were from the beginning on like participatory action research. So they were just really involved in this whole process, and that really helped me to gain some trust with the adults and my participants, and also with their caregivers and family members, because it was like I'm not an external guy who's trying to recruit you for my study, but there's Lucas and Philip who are actually involved in the recruiting process. So my research question before the whole crisis, and I think is still relevant even during the crisis, is how do they interact? Like what can we learn from this interaction, this acquired deafblind adults and children and youth? So I have two participants and two adults and two teenagers. They both live here. That was the research criteria, that they have to live in the institute so they can interact with each other. Over here, we can plan things. And that interaction, physical interaction, it never, well, we started meeting, we did the recruiting, we did the whole the process before with the insurances and everything else. But we couldn't really get on with activities that we wanted to do and things. So that's where it's like it helped me to find what's the real purpose of my study. Is it just to connect, or is it like I'm trying to do something else? And this is where I realize it's more of like a self-empowerment, like get them to do what they want, and like just foster this interaction between this transgenerational, between two peers. And like maybe we can learn something from them, like as an educator, as a deafblind teachers or caregivers. I think an adult deafblind person can help us in this caring, or better to make us better in our work. And just also for friendships, I think like if I work with Lucas and Philip, I'm there. I feel like I'm getting paid for my time. Whereas if they interact with each other on their own free time, that's like real friendships. That's the real interactions without a third person involved in the middle. So that, I think that was the purpose of my interaction. And with the Corona crisis, it just made it really clear to me. So my research was from the beginning participatory action research. It was based on a grounded theory design. So what the themes would come up, so I can analyze it. And the plan was to get to know each other first, the youth and the adults, and we will plan for an activity. And then we will see if that activity is a good idea or not. And just like the activity was like a tool to get to know each other. And we would just readjust and fine tune it and analyze after every cycle. Because of Corona, this whole thing went online, and we could readjust really quickly. The feedback session happening really quick. Even the whole action research, the cycle was quicker because it was all online, and then it was happening. They were reflecting in feedback, readjusting themselves quicker, and I was just like an observer then. And what really helped is this: we started before even the crisis a little side project where we wanted to connect kids with WhatsApp communication and then text to speech and voice over. And in this picture, you see this was where we're doing the training. And this really helped me a lot to be in touch with them after during the crisis, and for them to be in touch with each other. Of course, not everyone can use WhatsApp. That's what we realized during my research, that the adults, they focus more on email conversation and communication and not WhatsApp. So that's where Lucas and Philip had to readjust their communication and go on an email chat groups with the two adult participants. But this really helped for them to be in touch with each other and with me during the whole crisis. And these are our plans before the crisis. Lucas wanted to go to a Volkswagen factory, and Philip wanted to go to a club. And together we all wanted to fly to Scotland, to Glasgow. The adults wanted to go to a brewery, and one of the adults wanted to go in a balloon, a hot air balloon. and cooking. So they were like, these are just some of the plans that we had that we couldn't do because of the restrictions. But we stayed in touch. I don't think that social distancing means social isolation. You don't have, like we went online, and this was a time where we had to be there even more. And here, and as you can see a little on the right, I can't share everything with you because of privacy issues, but the kids, the adults, and the youth, they were constantly online talking about exchanging live information, the changing rules, and what's happening. And like it was not about the research anymore. I was just there just for this communication. I was just there for them if they need me. And I think that helped me as a researcher to gain trust from them, and also from the adults, that I was not talking about my research anymore. I was talking about, hey, how are you? So like the Lucas and Philip were constantly updating the adults because they were at home. They were not allowed to be in the school anymore, and the adults were here because of quarantine issues. But they were getting information from each other, what's happening in the outside world, and then they were getting what's happening in the school, like what's happening in the institute, are there new rules, and the masks. And so they were like, it was like astounded to see how much information they were exchanging with each other without me being in the middle or anyone else. They were doing it themselves. And then this was wonderful, and this was like a side product of, like I would say, from the research that just came out. And this was the moment where I realized that, wow, like it's email and then these WhatsApp groups and everything, they are wonderful in this crisis of Corona. The whole interaction online is live. It's not like you to have a conversation on an email and you have to wait. It was live on the spot conversation, and that really helped because everything was changing so quickly. Although I still was able to use this questionnaires that we had to fill it online. And then we used email and WhatsApp to do the online questionnaires. For example, on the left was a questionnaire that I thought would work if I do it with Lucas online. And there, I just have to say like how many times, like never, sometimes, often, like 4, you have to choose one. And it had to be in a graph, in a table form. I can't send an attachment because it's more complicated if you do as attachment, and it did not work. I'm like, okay, I need to rethink how will I do this questionnaire online with my participant. And on the right is the version that did work. Lucas was able to follow it with his, as you can see, he's doing it right now with his Braille machine, and the whole time he could answer the 4 options that he had. And this was really helpful for me to learn this how to design questionnaires for deafblind person like Lucas or other participants in my research. It was, and plus I also use WhatsApp in this Corona crisis to do questionnaires online. So on the left is this questionnaire that we designed for the 2 students, and on the right is their answers. So I would just send him 1 question at a time in WhatsApp, and then he will look at it and reply me. If he had a problem, he would send an email at the same time to his caregiver, so they can, because of the issues with vocabulary or stuff. So it was the whole online questionnaire meeting. And this we didn't plan for this. This was not planned before Corona, how to do all of this. But I think it's wonderful that I was able to still continue. And the new insights that I did not plan to learn is like this whole communication online, this whole social media with 4 deafblind participants. It's like the 2 of them rely on so Braille, like with Lucas, another one, whereas Philip over here, he uses text to speech, and other participant has a magnifying screen. So even to send an email to 4 people, it's you have to really think about 4 different ways of how they are reading this email. And even the empty spaces or my indents or like how do I align my text in the email or my WhatsApp communication, it's all like you have to really plan. Or the questionnaire, it has to be in a nice table that a deafblind person can follow. Or if you can just send an attachment and it opens into a Word document, that does not work because of technology you've seen. It does not work all the time, and they're alone in this time of Corona. They can't get that help. So I have to go simplify my communication really to the basics to get my answers to them, and so they can understand what the whole process. So these were the little insights that I have learned, and it's not. I'm not going to tell you about my research, what I have learned in my research, because that's not the topic, like Ines said. But there are multiple ways of doing a research. You know, you don't have to go from A to B like how I planned on flying and meeting and going to clubs. But we did stay in contact, and that was the main part of my research, to bring these two groups in touch with each other. And that happened even better during Corona, because they were forced in that. So over here, I will just thank you for your time, and we are here for your questions if you have any. There you go, Ines, you can take over.
Yeah, I'll just get myself in again. Vikram, do you want that we just start with the questions for you? Yeah. Because you're still in the topic.
Oh, okay. Oh.
I will just read out the question for you.
Okay. Yeah. Now just.
Yeah. So Rita just asked the question: are your deafblind peer voluntary workers happy being just friends and not asking a salary? Could you show your email page longer, please? Or maybe you just do this again.
Okay. Are you deafblind peer? You mean Lucas and Philip? These deafblind, they live here in the institute. They are two students in our institute. They are my friends now too. I have learned a lot from them in this whole process, and they are not getting paid for that. No. I think if I understand correctly your question, Rita, I hope I have answered it.
I'm also not sure if I understood it correctly, but I think so.
Could I try the email page longer, please? Okay, I'll try to share my screen once again and go to the email page. So.
Yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to contact us at any time. We still got like 13 minutes left, so I think we can go through all of the questions. But
oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, if you guys can write in the chat group, because Lucas is following this chat through his Braille machine, that would be really nice. And if you can use Google Translate to ask it in German, that would be even better, so he can reply himself and I don't have to translate for him.
So, and then there was a comment by Mr. Wittich. I think it was from him, where he said, I think the term social distancing was really unfortunate, and its replacement, physical distancing, did not take quite the same way. Well, there we are. And there's been another comment. I'm just looking now for questions, really.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for an excellent and valuable session during the Corona.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I see somebody's writing Guten Morgen to Lucas in German.
Yes, there's one question to Lucas. How has research been for you?
Yeah. Lucas has a question.
So Lucas is, I think Lucas is typing now.
Yeah, he's typing now, because he's basically, if you could see, there's a whole hackathon happening over here. We have their teachers who's helping them. If I could show you how we are doing it here. With this is their teacher, Peter, Mr. Schultz, and he's talking to Lucas with that machine on that rail. And then Lucas is connected with this machine to the chat group in our thing. And so it's like a bit, because of German and everything, we have to take some time with the answers with Lucas, but he is following it.
I've seen that there are some other questions concerning my studies. We will answer them in a minute, but for now, I think we wait for the answer.
Oh, what did Philip and Lucas enjoy the most during the research? I think that we couldn't really go out and go to the clubs or go to Scotland, which they would have enjoyed the most. But I think what they did enjoy the most is this whole WhatsApp communication, this whole training that we did for online. And for example, just for this Zoom meeting, we had to get Philip how to use Google Translate, and now he can do that. And that's more fun for the youth to learn how to use technology. For example, Lucas, like, even did you see that how he can use 2 different Braille machines and everything, and the email to do questionnaires? I think that was the fun part then, and staying in touch the whole time, even when he was alone at home.
Vikram, it's interesting to see that with so many people in the same room for you, nobody seems to be wearing any masks.
Yeah, we have it. I have the mask over here, but like we have been here so close for the whole time, but we have measured our distances with each other before we sat down like a proper. And like, although there's in Germany now it's getting better now. The situation, everything is opening up. So we luckily, hopefully, it will be going to normal soon again here in Germany. I mean, we are still not allowed to meet. The adults section and the youth section is still not allowed to meet.
And we are still in the distance of 1.5 meters. I don't know what this is in inches or in another metric system, but we still have to keep distance, yes.
Oh.
Shall we just go a bit forward? I'm not sure if Lucas is still typing.
Yeah, I think he's typing something, but it's okay. You can go ahead, like his answer will pop up in the chat group. Or somebody's saying, Philip, ich auch nutze die orange Brille. Oh, wie toll. Philip, somebody's like talking to you. Jemand hat mit dir gesprochen, Philip, in the chat. Yeah.
So there's been one question from Rita, I think. It was the question was, interesting. Did you include sound recognition, distance, and directional knowledge in your research? So yes and no, because the main aspects of my research were aspects such as methodology-wise, so which methods can we use in general and more specifically for children with deafblindness, and which challenges might arise and which other aspects are important. For example, if we have a sound source, how far is the sound source away from the child, and how many decibel pure or can the child perceive? I'm not sure what this is in English. So this is a bit of a limitation to my study actually, because although the assessment of functional hearing is, I thought, quite a small and specific part of studies, it was still too broad just to ask how does assessment of functional hearing work, because it includes so much more than we actually think. So this is actually a limitation to my study, but recommendation to go a bit further there. And then there has been a question about, it was a question about the literature review. For those who are less familiar with the many types of literature reviews, can you say a few words about scoping reviews, rapid reviews, and systematic reviews? Well, I highly recommend Chris Hart, and the book's called Doing a Literature Review. If you're more interested about it, I can send you the whole, what is it called, citation for it. And there are the basic rules on how literature review works. And I think every author names literature reviews or different type of literature reviews differently. So a systematic review would be a very, very broad and a very, very in-depth study, which takes over several months. So I guess like 8 months to a year. Scoping reviews is more like key topics that are mapped out through the literature and that are just being illustrated. So my own literature review would be something between scoping and semi-systematic review, I guess. But if you need more knowledge on this, I highly recommend Hart doing a literature review, and the book's from 2018, I think. Yeah, 2018. But again, if you have any further questions, feel free.
There is a question, Ines, like, did you find any reaction combination of sound and vibration?
Did you find any reaction of combination of sound and vibration? I'm not sure if I get the question correctly.
Like,
to be honest, yeah.
I think that what you mean, like if you also included sound and vibration in your assessment as a tool, maybe.
Vibration, not itself, no, truly not, because I think if we go, then we have to ask ourselves, what do we actually assess? Do we assess, for example, like the haptics, or I'm not sure what it's called in English, to be honest with you. It's not the tactile sense, but you know what, because vibration again is another sensory input. So I have not focused on that, but really exclusively on sounds. But of course, we must consider that vibration as well as tactile sense assessment is highly important. Vibro-tactile.
Yeah.
No, fortunately not.
Yeah, I would just point out that Philip's video is paused because he's using it on his mobile phone, and when he goes in the chat, he's leading your chat group comments, and his video pauses. Then he's back on again. Because somebody wrote that you cannot see the Lucas and Philip before in the chat group. Unfortunately, it only works on the computer. On the mobile, he uses a text-to-speech software on his mobile, and so he uses Zoom on a mobile device. And when he uses the chat, it stops showing his live video feed.
So we have 5 more minutes now. If you have any other questions. Assessment tools. Which did you find the most effective? This was a big discussion actually with the experts in the expert hearing to use assessment tools or toolboxes. And the general opinion, no, not the general opinion, but some opinions refer to that assessment tools are not always good. I mean, they're helpful, but they limit us in our imagination. They give us some ideas how we can assess, but we only focus on what does the assessment tool do, how can we use it, and we do not think broader than that. We only stay with the assessment tool. But in general, what was good for the assessment was meaningful sounds for the child. So for example, voices. So for example, recording of voices or noise producing toys or sounds of everyday life. For example, like twittering of a bird or barking of a dog or something like that, what the children are familiar with. So this would be methods of assessment, but tools were rather critically reviewed. There's one question on, would you recommend mixed methods, both qualitative and qualitative outcomes to show effectiveness in assessment? I'm not sure if you meant, quantitative and qualitative outcomes. I think this is highly necessary, and I think that we need it, but I'm not sure if we are ready to do so, because I'm also part of another research project at the University of Education in Heidelberg, and we are actually trying to develop a screening and assessment tool to identify deafblindness in children with additional disabilities. And we've done some prior studies, and I think we need the quantitative and the qualitative mixed method approaches, but I'm not sure if we're already ready, because the problem is, for example, with the assessment of hearing is the readability. How can we interpret what does a child hear and what doesn't the child hear, and is the child interested actually in the sounds, or is it just not reacting because it's not interesting? So we can have an own webinar on this topic actually, because it's so broad.
Yeah, over here, Lucas just wrote that he's using his braille machine in German so that I can read everything what you're typing. And somebody asked if they have friends who are congenital deafblind. Yes, they do, actually. In the institute, they do have some friends in other houses that we live that are congenital deafblind. I'm just answering it for them. Oh, and Philip is writing, hello, how are you? Yeah, Philip, thank you.
So there's one question, are you both planning to publish your research, and when do you expect we might be able to read the articles? To be honest with you, I hope we can actually publish it, but we have got no information on that by our professors, but I think there should be something in the Journal of Deafblindness. But
yeah, I hope so too, that it is published and out there for everybody to read soon. It will not be the same research that we started before of Corona, but it's going to be a bit different, which I think even is more interesting because it was forced upon us and we had to live through the whole research process during the Corona. So I think for me and Ines, I think it will be a good paper to publish this year.
Not just for us, but we've got some follow students who want to read at this part. So,
but I already know that for sorry, Walter.
That's okay. I think actually timing for your publications will be important, because this is more important now than it will be a year from now.
Yes.
So, and as a researcher, I will look for it. So this is going to be interesting and important, there's no doubt. I'm mindful of the time to give our sign language interpreters a break. Vielen, vielen tausend Dank. Wunderbare Arbeit. Ganz begeistert. Kann kaum warten, dass ich das lesen kann. I wish you a wonderful day, and thank you so much for being our first session on day 4 today.
I wish you a good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving us the chance. Bye.
All right, everybody, we will be back with you in about 15 minutes on the full hour for session number 2. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our second session. A few maintenance and housekeeping things before we get started. We've done our best, we tried for accessibility. And so you will see that we do have our international sign language interpreters in one of the screens. However, we were unable to raise the funds or the volunteers for live captioning. So that does not exist this time around, but we are trying better for next time. If you are interested, we are recording the session. So we hope to have this on the line in maybe a few days. So if you miss anything today, you will be able to go back and have a look. If Zoom is new to you, there are also some Zoom resources available on the website of Deafblind International. One of them can explain to you that in the speaker view at your top right corner, you can choose a shared image view where you can make the image of the interpreter larger in case you need that for accessibility. A big thank you today to Bridget and Robert, who are going to be our interpreters. Just a quick reminder to please speak one at a time and not to speak too quickly. Otherwise, we're making their life very hard and they have to work extra hard to get their salary today. Few of the rules of engagements. You will have noticed for those who've just joined us that your cameras and your microphones are muted. That is so we can focus on the content of our presenters today. It makes it a little easier. You will also see that most of our presentations have at least 2 presenters. Actually, we now have 3 coming up. And that is because we've asked people to use the chat function as much as possible to interact and to pose questions. And so at least one of the speakers is always looking at the chat to see what are good questions to answer and maybe even give you some responses already while the presentation is going on. For those of you on social media, we encourage you to share as much as possible. Let the world know about us during Deafblind International's Deafblind Awareness Week. If you are on Twitter, please use the hashtag DbI webinar, and you can tag at DbI_connect in order to connect with Deafblind International itself. But enough about me. Let's hand things over to the ladies who are going to give our next session. We have Marianne Rorje, Petra Hage, and Saskia Dahmen. Ladies, the screen and the next 45 minutes are yours.
Thank you, Walter. So, I'm very pleased to be a presenter at this webinar. I'm very pleased with the topic that we're going to present to you. This topic is online support for parents of children with congenital deafblindness. My name is Saskia Dahmen. I work as an assistant professor at the University of Groningen at the Department of Inclusive and Special Needs Education in the Netherlands. I'm also the curriculum coordinator of our international master program Deafblindness, and I work as a senior researcher at Royal Dutch Cantalis. This is an organization that provides care and education for people with communicative and hearing problems in the Netherlands. Okay, then now Petra is going to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Petra Hagen and I work as a speech and language therapist at Royal Dutch Cantalis. I am responsible for promoting communication and language of young deafblind children with and without other disabilities.
Yes, my name is Marianne Lorijen and I'm currently doing my PhD at the University of Groningen at the same department as Saskia. My research project concerns communication development of persons with congenital deafblindness.
Okay, our webinar will focus on the online support of parents of children with congenital deafblindness. And we believe this topic became highly relevant in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdown, which made it impossible to provide face-to-face support to children with deafblindness and their parents. So here is an overview of the content of our presentation. I will first give a short introduction. Then Marianne will present her PhD project in which online training of parents is used. Then Petra will explain how during the COVID-19 pandemic, she provided online support to parents of children involved in the early intervention program Triangle at Royal Dutch Cantalis. On the slide is a picture of a very old building. It's the Academy building, the main building of the University of Groningen. And at this university, we have an Institute for Deafblindness. And the aim of this institute is to develop evidence-based practice. And evidence-based practice means that whenever professionals, for instance, in the field of deafblindness, provide support, such as support to parents, they use their own expertise, but also integrate knowledge that has been gathered about what is effective based on systematic research. So we are doing a lot of research on effectiveness of intervention programs for the target group. Next slide. Oh yeah, well, sorry, yes. It is clear that in order to develop evidence-based practice, we need to do research in practice. And at the University of Groningen Institute for Deafblindness, we focus on people with deafblindness themselves, but also on their educators, such as their parents, their caregivers, and teachers. And in our research program, we have developed and tested several programs for enhancing communication between individuals with congenital deafblindness and their communication partners in collaboration with Royal Dutch Cantalis. Here you see a lot of these programs that we developed on the slide. Examples are the contact program of Professor Marleen Jansen, but also you see my name. I developed a program called High Quality Communication Intervention, and I also tested this program. Then on the bottom, in the end, you see the name of Marianne Lorijen. She is now involved in her PhD study, Tell It, and she will present this later. What the main ingredient in these interventions is that we use communication coaching. And this coaching is used for communication partners such as parents, caregivers, and teachers. And we also always use video feedback. So what is video feedback? This is a term that we use for pedagogical programs in which communication partners watch their own interactions with a child or a student or a care recipient on a video and evaluate these interactions. And this evaluation is guided by a coach. And the coach aims to empower the communication partner and also models effective interaction strategies. And on the bottom of this slide, you see a photo of myself doing video feedback with a caregiver. And we have a laptop in the middle, and on the laptop is a video of a person with deafblindness. Well, we really want to enhance interactions for children with deafblindness with their communication partners, and it is very clear that we also want to involve the parents of these individuals. The problem is, however, that we noticed that it was often not so easy for parents to be part of video feedback programs. For example, because we organized the face-to-face interaction sessions at a location of the care or educational facilities of the child. So parents had to travel to those facilities. And also it could be that sessions were organized during the daytime, and sometimes parents have jobs or other responsibilities, and that's the reason that they can't take part of these sessions. So for our new PhD project, Tell It, we decided to also offer online training for parents in the hope this would enable them to participate. And now Marianne will explain more about the Tell It program and also gives examples of online parent training.
Yes, thank you, Saskia. Yes, Tell It is, as mentioned by Saskia, is one of the intervention programs in which video feedback sessions between a communication coach and a communication partner plays an evident role. The research aim of my PhD study is to support communication partners of persons with congenital deafblindness and in enhancing tactile communication and language in a way that these persons can demonstrate an increased influence in communication. For example, that a person with congenital deafblindness proposes an activity or an object during a conversation, or is able to add new subjects to the conversation. The intervention consists of 3 phases: attunement and shared emotions, meaning making and shared meanings, and bodily and tactile communication and language development, and the consolidation of phase 1 and 2. As you can see, builds Tell It further on the previous programs, the contact program by Marné Jansen and the high quality communication program by Saskia. The different phases are transcending and cannot be seen separate from each other. That means that you need to obtain a sense of attunement before you can go to meaning making or to shared meanings, for example. Then I made a circle on the screen so you can see how the 3 phases are going from one to the other. Each new phase starts with an online or face-to-face training session provided by me as researcher, and mostly together with the communication coach. During each phase, there are 7 in total, coaching sessions between the communication partner and the coach. In these coaching sessions, the theory of the training sessions is discussed together with the recorded natural communication situations of the client and the communication partner. This can be seen as an integration of theory and practice. In addition to giving parents the opportunity to participate in the online training sessions, Royal Dutch Cantalis provided each parent with an iPad to facilitate filming and use it for the online training sessions. The online training sessions. As explained by Saskia, we gave parents the opportunity to participate online instead of visiting them at their homes or at one of the Cantalis locations. Of the in total 6 participating parents, 3 of them were interested in the online training sessions. reasons for them to join online. They found it easier to fit in everyday family life. They found it more accessible than having me as a visitor at their home. And they did not want to spend me a lot of time to getting to their places. How it worked. We used Skype or Zoom. Prior to each session, I sent the invitation together with the training session as a presentation. They watched the presentation on the second screen. They could use the iPad for that. And they used another screen so we could see and talk to each other. When there was a video within the presentation, I shared my screen with them. If possible, the coach joined as well to the online session. If this was not possible, they received a report afterwards. Regarding the other parents, for one parent, it was possible to join the training session held at the school together with the teacher. The other two parents preferred to see me at their homes, but only if it fitted into my schedule, they said. So I had with both one online session. They found it okay, but they preferred the real sessions over the online sessions because they said the communication flows in a more natural way. In case of the face-to-face sessions, the coach attends as well, physical if possible, and otherwise online. And otherwise online. This was also different for the coaches. Some of them preferred the online and some of them preferred the face-to-face sessions. My own experiences regarding the long travel distances, it is easier, quicker, and it takes less energy to provide these sessions online. I have the idea that I can convey the information in a clear way by the online sessions. In both situations, online and face-to-face, there is the possibility for a real conversation and to discuss several topics. Although I do miss a bit the social talk and social contact when you visit parents at their homes, like getting something to drink, to see where they live, and to meet the children, etc. Although I don't know if this has an effect on the session itself. Prior to the first training session, I arranged an introduction appointment with all the parents at the school or at their homes. For me, I found it important that I met them at least once in real life, and maybe even more important that they had the opportunity to get to know me. So far, my experiences with the online training sessions. Now, Petra will continue with telling about the early intervention program during COVID-19.
Thank you, Marianne. Now I will explain our early intervention program and how we, during the COVID-19 pandemic, provided online support to parents of children involved in the early intervention program Triangle. The photo in this slide, the triangle, symbolizes the triangle of collaboration between professionals, parents, and their child. From the beginning, there is a close and intensive collaboration with parents. Parents have the opportunity to be present within the group in which the early intervention program is offered to their child. The professionals who work with the children in the group include pedagogical practitioners, a speech therapist, and a sensory integration therapist. They get support from a system-oriented practitioner, a psychologist, and a physical therapist. From a safe base, the children are stimulated in their communication, interaction, language, emotional and cognitive development, play, physics, and self-reliance. Every child has its own communication and treatment plan, which is discussed face-to-face with parents every 3 months. Videos of professionals and the children are discussed with parents at home, and parents receive daily reports, photos, and short videos of interaction and communication moments that day. All children are followed and stimulated in their development at their own level, and individual goals are set for each child. The program consists of hands-on assessment, group-oriented activities, individual one-on-one activities, and therapies. In our an early intervention program, the most important goal is to maximize the child's opportunities for optimal learning, communication, and language. Knowledge from intervention studies, such as contact and high-quality communication, is integrated in the interaction and communication approaches throughout the day. We apply strategies from the intervention programs, such as attuning and effective involvement in the interaction, routines, and we communicate in different ways, such as with tactile gestures and signs or objects of reference. When the COVID-19 pandemic started, the need for online coaching of parents suddenly became urgent because their children were not able to visit the Centalis facilities, such as the Triangle, anymore. We don't work in the intervention programs with laptops. We use a hands-on approach, and we could not offer direct early intervention to the children anymore. Therefore, it was not possible to communicate directly in a tactile way with the children, such is shown in the photo in this slide. After the lockdown, we contacted parents and offered them parent support. The main purpose of this support was to show and coach parents in how to interact with their children. So, we shared practical examples, information, and knowledge about several topics with the parents, which you can divide into concept of the world and activities in which communication is central. I will briefly explain one topic, floor play techniques, and how we approached it. Parents received each day a video from one of the professionals that showed application of a communication strategy, and in this case, floor play techniques. In the videos, we gave examples such as how to start tactile communication, how to apply hands-on communication, what to do when the child responds or takes an initiative, and what parents could see and do if children would ask for repetition. The time of viewing the video could be determined by the parents themselves. And because it is important to convey the practice and the theory as well, in the floor play techniques, it were in an accompanying document explained. And we explained in the document which toys could be used at home and how they could be used at different levels. By offering explanations, we stimulated parents to develop their own interpretation of the technique and made modifications to fit the strategies to the needs of their child. In the photo in this slide, you see an example of how we've tried to explain the different levels of play using a mirror. We also made videos of activities in which communication is central, such as the songs we sing with the children, with accompanying signs. Also, different sensory activities were explained and illustrated in a video. Each time, one of the senses and how to stimulate the sense was central. Explained was for the parents what to use in material, how to look for regulation strategies, and what to do. Another activity was an example of how to create your own snoezelen room at home. And there were also therapy exercises. We asked parents for feedback on the quality and quantity on parent coaching at different moments during the COVID-19 pandemic. I will share some of our experience with this feedback. These experiences are divided in reactions of parents and experiences of online support. There were differences in opportunities and responses between families. Some parents were able to respond daily, Some were only able to watch the videos and read the theory, but weren't able to respond at all due to the complex situation they were facing. We saw some parents implement the early intervention activities themselves. And parents also sent videos of themselves and their child, which we could provide of feedback. Parents also mentioned examples of what they did at home and how it went. We also saw involvement of parents, but also of brothers and sisters. Siblings also watched our videos and are much more active. Because we received from parents some videos in return, we were able to coach parents based on their own videos. Some parents had also questions about how to cope with the situation. For example, how to communicate the difference between mom is at work at home and mom is mom at home and can play with you. Some parents were not familiar with our online programs, such as with uploading videos, and we coached them in their own online skills. Saskia?
Last slide. Okay. When we look at our experiences with online support of parents, we can see both challenges and opportunities. To our experience, there are huge differences between parents in the extent to which they are willing or able to participate in online training or coaching. This has to do with their attitudes towards online programs and their familiarity with it, but also with the access of online programs. Some parents are very enthusiastic, others preferred face-to-face contact or had little time to participate in online coaching. We also found differences between communication coaches in the extent to which they were open for the idea of using online parent support. Then we had a lot of questions ourselves. For instance, about the effectiveness of online parent support. And as far as we know, there's still a lack of knowledge on this topic, and especially when it concerns online video feedback. Also because we know, normally when you have face-to-face interaction with the communication partners, you also model a lot of interaction strategies during this session. So how to do that when there is a huge distance. Then we also had challenges in sharing information with parents. It appeared difficult to share materials online, such as books or play materials because of authorship rules. And then when it comes to sharing information about children, we also had to be very careful because of privacy rules. And there were some potential safety risks when using online programs. For instance, we know WhatsApp is not a safe program. So, on the other hand, we have experienced now that online parent support can create new possibilities for collaboration with parents. At the moment in the Netherlands, the lockdown is lifted and children are coming to our intervention programs, our schools, and also our other services again. So everything seems to go back to normal again. But the question is now, how can we continue the online collaboration with the parents? We don't have the answer yet, but perhaps you as an audience have some suggestions for that. And then the last slide. So this was the presentation that we prepared for you today. We want to thank you very much for attending. And also please note the contact information on the slides. You can always contact us if you have further questions, if you want to know something more about our work, or if you know, for instance, want to know something about the master program, Deafblindness. So now we go to the questions and comments, I think. And I think we will first look at the chat box. And
people are likely typing now. This is
okay.
very exciting. Thank you, ladies, for your presentation. Beautiful visibility for your program. I highly recommend your program for anybody who wants to get this level of training. And when you're finished with your PhDs, talk to me about doing postdocs. So it's an interesting question about what do we do with all this knowledge that we gain for working online when things are going back to whether or not we call it normal. I was actually, while following the presentations this week, the situation in South America is still very, very different. And so they, will listen to what goes on in Europe. Again, in the States, it's not open yet either, or it shouldn't be in some places. And so it's an interesting situation of how we may be able to learn from each other. Do you see that you will be able to put together sort of a guideline on the things you learned? Is that the goal?
I think that would be a very good idea, actually. I don't know, in the past, we really wanted to do also specific projects on this topic, also in collaboration between the university and Royal Dutch Cantalis. And we started something, but I think we now really have a very good vision to continue with such a project. And I think, to develop guidelines is a very good idea. There's also something here, Jessica, who says, I agree that it's good to continue to develop online working without losing the importance of face-to-face contact. Yes, because that's still very important.
I think that what is a big challenge for everyone is to separate which are the pieces where it is absolutely necessary to go back to what we used to do before. And which are the opportunities where we can now gain, yesterday we were talking about moments of saving time, saving money, in order to then reinvest this time and money in the components that are essential.
Yeah. I see here a question of Kim Owen. Have you returned to touch contact practice with congenital deafblind young people? And do you have some tips for proceeding with this with COVID-19 still active? Maybe Petra can say something about that.
Yes, I'm gonna try. We've returned into tactile contact. Just as Saskia said, the lockdown is lifted here. We are able to have tactile contact. And your question is also in how to have some tips for proceeding with this when COVID-19 is still active. When the COVID-19 here, the lockdown was active, we weren't allowed to have tactile contact. And we solved this question in coaching parents, because children are at home and we could coach the parents. We couldn't do it ourselves. I'm not sure if that's an answer in your question.
We can't see that now. I suggest that we maybe wait, I don't know, maybe the person can confirm yes or no. In the meantime, I can see other questions. I see there's a question about, do you have studies also on acquired deafblindness? Yes, we have. We do several studies on Usher syndrome, and at the moment I'm involved in a study looking at interventions to support both children with Usher syndrome and their parents. And there's a question, can you suggest some activities for older children with deafblindness? Petra, maybe you can also say something about that.
Oh yes, I'm still unmuted. We had a list of activities, such as the sensory activities, but also the different activities we follow in our programs, such as, for example, it's summer right here. It's hot. In the terms of the Netherlands, it's 30, 31 degrees. So in our group with the young deafblind children, the theme is summer, and lots of activities we do right now could be made online possible for parents in how to interact with their child sitting in a bath outside, or daily routines in dressing up, or well, I think there are lots of activities you can think about. And your question was with the elderly children. We think about cognitive activities and daily activities adapted at the age. So perhaps you can think in that way in thinking activities. Yeah.
Okay. I saw also, I think, a response on the previous thing you talked about on the tactile contact. The person asks, do you need to use gloves, masks, etc., as the incidence of COVID will not be 0 for a while? That's from Kim Owen. I think she also maybe addressed the former question. So do you use masks and gloves in the interaction with the children at the moment?
Sometimes we do. When, for example, the care activities, such as changing diapers, or we have children who have also other disabilities, which lose saliva, and that moment we do use gloves. We don't use the masks. Okay. Right now.
Okay. There's a question if the programs are available for us to view. I would suggest that if people are interested in these intervention programs that I talked about, they can send me a mail, because we have a lot of papers and other materials with information on that. Great to hear siblings became involved. Were siblings also involved in evaluating the coaching process?
No, we didn't ask the siblings, but I think it's a good idea to ask siblings if they want to give feedback on the online coaching. We do get reactions from the parents who wrote us that their brothers and sisters of the deafblind children liked the videos and also watched the videos and also wanted to do and to be a part of the activities. And I think that's also a kind of an evaluation, but we didn't ask, but it's a good idea.
Yeah. There's another idea here, is to coach professionals in the deafblind field on how to bring this online platform model to their communication, or to their community, sorry. Yes, maybe I can say something about, maybe Marianne, do you think this is a good idea? In coaching, in online, using online training and coaching?
Yeah, I think, well, it depends a bit on the coach, and also on how it's already facilitated in, for example, at Kentalis or the other institutions we're collaborating with. What I found, it's quite different. Some coaches are already, for example, like Petra, you don't have to explain them. They know how to get along with the online platform, but there are also coaches who need maybe a bit more guidance. So maybe we can offer something, yeah, based on their needs and questions on that.
And then there's a question, what are the moral support you are giving for your parents with deafblindness? Aha, so these are parents with deafblindness. And Actually, this is, of course, we are talking now on parents with a child with deafblindness. But yeah, I think this is also very important, of course, to provide support. And I think other colleagues of ours, I know they are very much involved in people with acquired deafblindness, for example, who also, some of them may have children. And I think they could also have a very interesting presentation on how to support these people. But I actually don't know how they did that and what did they do about this. But it's very interesting as well and important. There's also a person who says, thank you for your presentation. The daily feedback via video to parents option is brilliant and will definitely assist with budget and time constraints. And we too are dealing with privacy issues and parents with no technology at home. Yes. So that's the thing, of course. Other parents have very advanced technology. So the balance is meeting all the needs of the parents, that's for sure. Yeah. Can you think about that, Petra?
Yeah, we discussed it. It's finding the balance and the needs, and the balance between the needs and the possibilities of the parents. Yeah, that's true.
I actually I've observed this quite a bit, that communicating with parents and clients on our end, that especially at the period when things were the worst, you would have the father at home working, the mother at home schooling her children, the children trying to go online, the mother trying to access resources, and all of this with one single computer in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's sometimes the knowledge is there, but the technology is not. And the situations can be very unique and very challenging, and we have no control.
There's a question, what online communication tools do you use with the parents and the children, how to deal with privacy issues related to these tools?
Yeah, that was one of our challenges, because for example, we couldn't use Zoom in the Netherlands at Royal Dutch Cantalis, because it had problems with the privacy. So we had Skype for Business, but then the parents need to have Skype to have the online support. So that was one of the challenges, to find a mutual program which parents can use and we could use. So there were a couple of different programs. Skype was one of them, and Teams is one of them. Yeah.
And can you also, that's another question, can you share your video for stimulation for children with deafblindness? Not sure what, is this sharing with a video with the parents, or is this about sharing a video with other people, maybe with people using the DbI platform? I'm not sure what is meant here, but I think it's not so easy for us we decided not to show video today in our presentation, because that's, of course, it was also because it was recorded. I think otherwise it would have been easier for us to show you a video, but because it's recorded, it's especially difficult, because when it's online, yeah, there are some difficulties with that according to privacy rules. Hi, such an interesting presentation, but no subtitles. Okay, yes. And the lighting is making it hard for me to see face. Okay, yes. I chose this. This is not the most optimal room for me to have this presentation in, but it has the cable in this space. Yeah. So that's why I choose it. Yeah. I hope you still would be able to get enough information.
Yeah, and if people want, I can show, I can send the complete slides with my text if people want.
Okay. Great. Yeah, we can do that, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We're approaching the end of your time.
Yeah, and
want
I have
to
a
thank
little
all
bit of a
three of
time.
you. This was really, really wonderful. I'm glad that for you, the lockdown is lifted the way it is. I hope things continue well. Europe overall seems to be doing a bit better than the Americas right now. So good for you. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to hearing more and reading more once things are published.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. And we will take a well-deserved 15-minute break for our interpreters as well as for our brains. And we will see you all again for the next session on the full hour. Bye.
Oh, sorry. So there's one question. How do we contact this team? I would like to know more emails.
You will see that I posted Saskia's email earlier on in the chat. Otherwise, you can always email Deafblind International. We will get you in touch with the right people. Yeah. There you go. All right. Bye, guys. In order to bring you the best content possible. Also, a quick reminder that our session is being recorded. So in case you miss anything today, you will always have time to go back, catch up again. In a couple of days, it will be posted to a link on Deafblind International's website. Finally, we are big friends of social media. If you want to tell the world about our event during this week of Deafblind Awareness, please go ahead. If you are on Twitter, please use the DbI webinar hashtag or use @DbI_connect to connect with Deafblind International itself. Enough about me and my sessions, more about our speakers. Our next presentation team is Annika Maria Johannesson and Stine Ronaldsen-Vinkjansen. I hope I did not destroy your names completely, but you now have access to the screen, to the computers, to the microphone. The next 45 minutes are yours.
Thank you so much, Walter. I'm just going to start sharing my screen with everybody. Okay. Now you should see my screen. Hello, everybody. Well. Everything is okay, Walter?
Yes, it's working well.
Perfect. Welcome to this webinar, Norway in a Nutshell, Providing Services During the Pandemics. My name is Stine Vinkjansen, and this is my colleague, Annika Johannesson, and we are both presenters at this webinar. I'm going to start, and then Annika will monitor the chat, and halfway we will change. So we live in Bergen, and Bergen is the second largest city in Norway and is located on the west coast, as you can see on the map with the arrow pointing at Bergen. On this photo, you can see Bryggen during Christmas time. Bryggen is a series of Hanseatic heritage buildings, and it has been on the UNESCO list for World Cultural Heritage Sites since 1979. Bergen is surrounded by beautiful mountains and fjords. And on this photo, you can see a view over Bergen from Mount Fløya. Bergen is also known for its narrow streets filled with cobblestones, as you can see on this photo. On this last photo, you can see a big oak tree. This photo was taken a couple of weeks ago at our office area. We work as an advisor and senior advisor at Statped, Department of Dual Visual and Hearing Impairment and Deafblindness. We give services to persons with deafblindness and their network, mainly in the west part of Norway. I'm going to start giving you some statistics concerning COVID-19 in Norway. There are around 5.3 million people that lives in Norway, and we have had 8,751 reported cases of COVID-19. Around 929 have been admitted to hospital and 223 admitted to ICU. 244 people have died of COVID-19, and around 300,000 people have been tested. And these are numbers from 19th of June, last Friday. So back to the webinar. Title, Norway in a nutshell, providing services during the pandemic. So first, I'm going to share with you a case history that will cover a history of a person with acquired deafblindness. The second case, history, a person with congenital deafblindness, which will be presented by Annika. The two cases are fully anonymous. The case histories are followed by some of our reflections, and at the end, we would like everybody to share experiences and draw attention to topics we need to reflect upon to prepare for the future. We hope that you will reflect and discuss using the chat function and be interactive, and we will collect all of your questions and reflections during the session and raise them at the end. Article 11 of the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities refers to situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies. On the slide, you can see Article 11. So, a question we can ask ourselves is, has the service system in Norway been able to protect and provide necessary services to persons with deafblindness according to Article 11 during the coronavirus outbreak? To set the stage, on Thursday, the 12th of March, Norway imposed lockdown after the COVID-19 outbreak. Everything changed overnight. And one of the things that changed drastically was the way we could physically meet and socialize with each other. Due to this dramatic change, some critical questions are raised. How can we provide optimal services to people with deafblindness when we had to practice social distancing? And how can I be available as an advisor when I cannot be physically present? This kept me worried, and especially about the young man with acquired deafblindness, regarding his well-being during COVID-19. Peter, he's a very active and social person. He likes to hang out with people, socialize, and do different activities. He has a great sense of humor and uses that a lot in the interaction with others. Peter's social network is very limited. He lives by himself in an apartment, and he gets several services and support from the municipality. I remember the first phone call with Peter not long after the lockdown. He told me that he lost all of his regular services and didn't really understand why. The only service that was available to him still was home care services, which only helped him with his medications, and a friend that helped him with necessary grocery shopping. He told me that he was feeling restless, lonely, and isolated. His mental health was gradually getting worse, and he noticed that his tinnitus was more intolerable and he was having negative thoughts. It seems that suddenly Peter was put in a situation from having such an active life to being all by himself and isolated in his apartment. Because of his dual sensory loss and balance problems, he could not orientate or move around by himself outside his apartment, and he had no possibility of going, for example, for a short walk outside. After our first conversation, I realized the consequences the pandemic had for Peter, and this started my own reflection process. What is my most important role And what are the most necessary services to be given to him in a chaotic situation like this? What can I do? Peter and I spoke weekly, and sometimes several times a week. I wanted to give him the support he needed during our regular conversations. To be a conversation partner that is available, make him feel safe, and meets his worries and negative thoughts. I was able to be present in his life, even though I was not physically available. But even though we had established a good relationship through distance, I felt that our contact lacked certain important information. For example, being physically close to understand his body language and facial expressions. And I was wondering, could our conversation have a promoting effect on his mental health issues? And how could we build a relationship and be more connected through a physical distance? I really felt like the pandemic and the regulations was limiting me to provide the necessary support for Peter as an advisor. In Norway, one of the main focuses during the pandemic was that everybody should try to stay connected with friends and family, and people were using digital platform and video communication like never before. However, Peter did not prefer services or other communication support through video. He explained that his dual sensory loss made him fatigued and easily exhausted when communicating through video. During communication and interaction, he needs to be physically close to his communication partner due to his sensory impairment and need for tactile and haptic communication support. One of the major challenges that he faced was not being able to stay connected to personal and professional networks in times when everybody was socially and physically distant. So, how can I try to help Peter in a situation like this? Peter and I talked about this. He expressed that he tried accepting the situation and chose and committed himself to having a positive attitude. He also used some activity-based coping strategies during the pandemic. For example, he started baking and tried out many different recipes. And this really kept him busy and became a new hobby for him. He thought about how to use the situation to make his life better, also after the crisis. And he reflected over the current situation and the immediate future, like having something meaningful to look forward to. So he started to look into the possibilities of, for example, getting a tandem bicycle and maybe a new smartphone that was more catered to his needs. He also got in touch with many people in the same situation that he had not been in contact with before. So looking back, it seems that Peter had not been able to influence his own situation and was dependent on a resourceful network. Peter got back one of his support staff earlier than other people in his municipality. This was because a person in his local network noticed that his mental health was getting worse, and he really needed to be able to go out with guidance. Peter said that this had a great impact on him, and he immediately felt more social and positive. He also expressed that coming back to his daily routine was challenging, and he was more exhausted now doing the same activities than before the pandemic. So having the lockdown fresh in my mind, I've asked myself many questions. Should I have been more proactive? Did I fulfill my responsibilities? What could I have done when Peter's support system collapsed? If I should have done things differently, what would it be? And what was expected of me from Peter? Now, Annika is going to present her case history of a person with congenital deafblindness.
Just a little scene shift here. So, hi, thank you, Stina. So, when Corona lockdown was a fact, I emailed the service users I'm responsible for and informed them about the situation, that I couldn't travel and that our scheduled meeting had to be cancelled. But I was working from home and that they could contact me if needed, on phone, email, or other digital platforms. Because I work mostly with people with congenital deafblindness, living home with their families or in residential homes, most of my emails went out to the networks around the persons with congenital deafblindness, except for one. I sent him the email directly because he can read. The young man with Church syndrome responded that he was fine on the 27th of March. Even if times was different and strange, he felt fine. The only thing he wondered about was if he needed to buy a full overall to protect himself when out and about. 14th of April, a new email arrived. I'm having a difficult time now. It's so hard. It's a new leader attending the leader group in my residential home. Can you talk with the ones that decide? You are the only one who understands me. I want you to come and talk with me. I was thinking, why does he react so strongly about this? He has experienced many leader shifts. Why is it so crucial now? Also, his email was written quite incoherently, different from how he used to write. What can I do, I thought. Because of the GDPR, corresponding by email in Norway on a personal level is not allowed. He can't participate in a web meeting nor using the phone. Letters by post will take forever. And at that time, it was no possibilities for me to travel. It simply wasn't any flights, and this man lives far from Bergen. And the email made me worry about how he really coped in this situation. I discussed the issues with my colleagues, and we agreed about the only possible way for me to be able to meet him in his situation was by using email for now and then report in a risk evaluation. So I answered by email, feeling a bit naughty and not really safe about it. I met him on his frustration and secured him that I would talk to the people he asked me to. I also asked him if he could elaborate how he felt. What was he scared of and what he thought was needed for him to feel safe. He responded the day after, elaborating his feelings and worries, but still wanted me to come, even if he knew it was impossible at that moment. I arranged for him to have a meeting with his former leader to talk about the situation. And after the meeting, he wrote to me and said, "That was a good meeting." This was on April the 20th. 29th of April, a new email arrived. "I need you to come visiting me." It now had changed from want to need. In the beginning of May, the restrictions eased up a wee bit here in Norway, and flights was now possible, but only when necessary. So what does necessary really mean? We work in a third line service. There are people close to the man, both in the residential home and other places in his municipality. Is our service necessary? Why does he need me to come? I do think, when reflecting about it and also talking with him, it comes down to issues like he, as one who experienced that I have expert knowledge about deafblindness. Church syndrome. I have followed him in his communication development for the last 10 years. A continuity of the service. We talk about life when we are together as a part of the intervention towards him, because the intervention concerns all life situations for persons with congenital deafblindness. And this builds relations and trust. He expressed trust in me. He he see me as a person who know about his issues and his situations. Sometimes when he struggled to get that message in his close environment. Maybe that's why he need me in these pandemic times. Do I have a role of securing him, even if I'm far away? Again, back to my first wonder. Why do this issue with changing of the person in the leader group stress him so severely? It's a team of leaders. His service will go on. This leader will not be directly involved in his everyday life. Can his worries and reactions that came out so strongly be related to the pandemic situation and the lockdown? When everything in life changes, does this affect his mental health? And issues that he normally cope well with, are they now unmanageable? These are questions spinning around in my head. So, 12th of May, I sat on a flight. We consider it necessary. He and his teacher picked me up at the airport to avoid public transport as much as possible. It was a very happy man I met, and his first response was, "Hey, now feel safe, I." So this was our case and made me think a little bit, maybe it's our stories instead of the other stories, because it's actually how we have learned and reflected upon the situation from our point of view. Anyway, from these case stories, we've chosen 3 topics to reflect upon. So the first one is social isolation and mental health issues. The second one is communication challenges. And the third one is available information. So from our case stories, we can see that our service users managed to use good coping strategies on different levels. One started to find new activities to explore, to improve his situation. And the other one, his coping strategy was that he managed to contact our service for help. Still, both cases exemplified here show a vulnerability towards communication, social isolation, and lack of information. This makes us worry about mental health issues. In the day of total lockdown, we considered necessary service as a part of health promoting work through continuous contact with supportive dialogues. Mainly to prevent social isolation as one of our main worries due to persons with deafblindness. The dialogues could contain everything from easy small talk about everyday life to deeper conversations. Still, it felt challenging to communicate about all these issues, not being able to be physically present. As most of our service users are dependent on their communication partners being physically present. We wonder and reflect on which consequences lack of physical present communication partners or partners using infection control equipment while being in touch. How will that affect the persons with deafblindness who are in need for bodily tactile communication, for example, during the pandemic and also in the future? How will the future look like? Our experience was that necessary information was not always comprehended among our service users due to the need of individual communication support and accessible formats. Lack of information also influenced us as well. It was hard enough to cope with information changing several times a day on a personal level, and then trying to be supportive and meet persons with deafblindness and their worries on a professional level, with working frames that was very unpredictable and changed all the time. That made us also insecure about the content of the service that was provided and who the service was accessible to. Due to Article 11 of the UN Convention that Stine started with, we feel that we're not really prepared for this situation, and we see the need for a special developed contingency plan for the population with deafblindness. So now we are really curious about your experiences, and we really want to reflect together with, we want you to reflect together with us upon these topics: social isolation and mental health issues, communication challenges, and available information. Please take 2 minutes to reflect upon these questions and use the chat function to share with us. We will time you. In the meantime, we will mute ourselves and be available on the chat, and we will unmute ourselves after 2 minutes. So then you hear or see us when we are ready. We will gather your reflection and respond to it. So be free to share. That's what we really want to do. And we will collect and share with you after a little while.
Thank you, ladies. We will let everybody catch up with their questions and their typing. All right, we'll give it a minute or two for people to post what they would like to know. I'll encourage all our attendees. There we go. Some of the questions are slowly coming in. Courage, courage. We are curious what you would like to know.
Oh, thank you for all your responses. And if somebody hasn't written in already, just feel free to continue. We will try to collect some of your responded, and obviously we have to choose some. Yeah. And Justina, you will write up, and we will try to discuss it a little bit.
So this comment with a lot of questions is from Linda. She writes, that is an interesting question. Since we are not yet open in the US where I live, have family members or providers noticed mental health concerns with deafblind individuals or parents of persons with deafblindness when resuming normal activities? Have deafblind people had additional anxiety or depression over transitioning to the new normal or resuming previous activities with physical distancing or other protective measures? Does anyone know of strategies to help manage this?
Yes. Well, you had a lot of questions there, I think, or reflections, not questions necessarily. And we are not the experts here, even if we may have come a little bit further, opening up a little bit again. I do think that what we see, that's also something that we put on in our own reflections. It's like we feel that how do we reach the people, you know, and also how do we how are we able to really pick out who is in the worry group for mental health issues or who is not? Because one thing we have been discussing a lot actually is like when we spread our, being in contact, some people say, oh, I'm okay. And some people say, oh, I'm not so okay. And for the people who say, I'm okay, some of them that we know well, some we're not sure if they are really okay, but they also have to decide for themselves, the people we can be in contact with. And then it's the other groups that we really can't reach, that we have to reach towards networks. And then it's up to the networks of those people also to be able to recognize any signs for mental health issues. But we are also still in the middle, starting to open up. Our service is not really back at the moment. So I think like this is maybe reflections and issues we need to bring on with us in the future to learn from, and also be especially aware of what potentials, what mental health issues, or have a view on mental health issues in the time to come.
I agree with what you're saying. I think that's an important point. I think I would like to add that none of us really are okay. Whether you're deafblind or not, right now, this is not easy. And so I have told people that I'm okay when I know I'm lying. And I think that deafblind people are likely not that different from anybody else where it comes to that. And it's true that we have a real challenge in trying to figure out how bad it is and who are the people that really need us. Yeah.
And also how to reach them. I think that's really very hard, because we can't be physical present, or well, we can start to be that now, hopefully, if it's not blowing up again. So it's like, it's a very, it's a strange situation for us, and we really felt that, are we actually reaching the people who actually need to be reached?
So there's a question concerning this topic, maybe a little bit. Kvanne asks, what platform have you found to be best when working remotely with deafblind individuals? Zoom, Google Teams, Skype, etc. What accommodations have you found to be useful when working remotely?
Well, that's so different. It's such a big, it's a difficult answer, because, and that's also a little bit what we said in the last sentence, that we need to be prepared for the individual, what do you call it, to develop individual platforms or possibilities to reach all, because some can't use any of the digital platforms at all. And and some are really, really can find useful platforms to be on. So, so we have, yes, some we have not Zoom. We haven't used Zoom. Have you?
No, I have not.
No,
I have 2 times had video conversations with 2 service users with acquired deafblindness, and from my perspective, they were very comfortable with the technology. So, and for me, I found it good to be able to see them and to be able to pick up a little bit more about like body language and things like that. But for most of our service users, we just try to use the method that works for them individually. So if it's SMS or email or phone or video, or even sending a letter to them in their mailbox. So we have tried to reach them whatever way is best for them to communicate.
and also we have quite strong personal GDPR.
Yeah.
So actually we are not allowed to share personal or we can receive personal information from the person themselves, but we are not actually allowed to respond on it if they're using email, for example, in my case. And it's really hard because of the protection. So like I said, I felt a little bit naughty, even if I had my boss in my back and stuff like that. So it's very difficult, and we really don't have any answers. We think we have to sew together a very individual system for each of the persons based on their communication issues. Yeah.
I'm trying to monitor the chat here. You're so active and it's so good and have long reflections. So it was a little bit hard, but I found a question here for you, Annika. It is Ulrich from Ulrich. One question to your case, Annika, and a reflection on why the man suddenly needed you to come visit him. Could a part of it be that he was worried about you during the pandemic?
Yeah. When I first mailed him, I was saying I was okay, that I was not sick, and but it was a stressful time for all of us, and I was wondering how he was coping within this time. But that's totally right, because I think while working with service for so many years, you build up, like I said, trust and relations and stuff like that. So he could easily also be worried about me and my situation. And maybe that's also why he needed to see me. And we were really considering trying to just, if I could send him a picture or try to just have a Zoom or whatever for a wee while. But it really, he doesn't want to do that. So that was not a possibility. And I think when we had a little bit of an opening, we thought that it was necessary for him to see me. Yeah. So that could be also a really good possibility. And I, like you also said, Walter, it's the things that happened during the corona is not because you are deafblind. It's like also within us, we are insecure. We don't know. Everything is unpredictable. We have a little bit of a scare maybe, and also kind of depressing to just being home and stuff, all these things. So yeah, I think that's a good perspective, Ulrich.
Okay, I think we have 6 minutes left.
Yeah.
So here is a comment from Severin. He says, hello, thanks for sharing. I will be very interested in experiences with children, adults who have no language to express and understand the situation.
Mm. Yeah, and I think also for me, who work mostly with the congenital deafblindness, and usually towards also the networks, I do think at this time it's very important to make the networks of the close persons, the communication partners, to be aware of changes, for example, and also how we can tile for the person, a kind of understanding for children and also people with severe communication issues, to have a kind of grip of what's happening. I don't have any broad solution how we work. We usually work towards each individual, trying to make that comprehensible in a sense. Yeah.
There are so many comments and they're so long. So when I'm trying to kind of grasp the main.
So well, this is the. It's easier to speak when we have you online, but it's so good that you are so active and you have all these ideas. And when we are saying bye-bye to you, we have pointed out our email addresses. So if any of you want to continue these discussions or these reflections, we will love to email us.
Yeah.
And
I see that there's so many questions, some questions for me and maybe for you. So we don't have the time now because it's limited. So please send us an email with a same question or other reflections. Yeah,
that would be brilliant. Yeah.
If you can type your emails into the chat box, or if you have a slide that
we have a slide.
There you go. That'll give people some more time to have a look at those slides.
But Walter, is the chat, have you any possibility of keeping the chat?
Yes, actually, that's a very good question. It turns out that when we record the session, we are also recording the chat. So I will talk with Michelle, who is taking care of our technology, how we can make the chat accessible.
Because then we can go through it, all of the questions and the reflections and the thoughts. And I think it's so important for us.
I actually think it's also interesting for the listeners to have access afterwards, because there are many comments you want to take the time to read, including me. So yes, I want this as well.
Yeah, perfect.
Ladies, it has been absolutely delightful. Greetings to your nutshell. It is while you were presenting, I went onto the website of Johns Hopkins in order to look up some statistics, and of course now we're at 9.5 million people recorded, and the number is rising. It is a really fascinating perspective for me, because I'm present for all 26 hours of the webinar to recognize the similarities. Many of the comments and questions you are posing are the same in South America, are the same in Australia. And it's really impressive to see how our community is coming together to solve these problems. So thank you very, very much for playing your part. And we will try to make all this information available as soon as we can.
Yeah, thank you, Walter.
And thank you so much for listening and for the opportunity to share.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, we will give our sign language interpreters their well in reserved 15 minutes, and we'll see you again at the full hour. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving forward. Good. So we are ready for our next presentation. But before I get into that, let me do a bit of housekeeping and maintenance. Please note that we are recording our sessions. So in case you're missing something today, not to worry. You should be able to access the information maybe in a couple of days on the website of Deafblind International. We've tried our best to make things accessible. We've succeeded to have our marvelous international sign language interpreters, but we did not succeed in raising enough money to have live captioning for you. We're working on that for some time in the future, but we apologize that that was not possible this time. That has to do with the fact that it's a free event. I thank Bridget and Robert who are signing for us today. However, it is because of them that I want to remind our speakers to stick to their 45 minutes because we want to give them their 15-minute break in between. For those of you who are interested in having the image of the sign language interpreter a little bit larger, then in the viewing options, there's an option called Share Screen, where you have control over the size of the image of the interpreter, and you can make it a little bit larger if that helps. For those who've joined us just now, you'll see that your microphones and your cameras are turned off in order for us to allow the focus on the presenters today. You will also see that most of our presentations have at least 2 presenters. This is because we would like to encourage everybody to use the chat function and to communicate with us and the speakers during the presentation and ask questions afterwards as well. This way, one of the 2 presenters usually has their eye on what is going on in the chat and is preparing some good answers for you. If you are using social media, I encourage you to let the world know about what's going on and what we're doing. Specifically, if you're on Facebook, share things on the Deafblind International Facebook page. And if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag DbI webinar or tag at DbI_connect to connect with Deafblind International. But enough about me, more about our content. And so now our next presenters are the lovely Melinda Allen and Gwen Sheridan, who are going to now activate their screens and their microphones. The next 45 minutes are yours, and we look forward to your content. Go ahead. We see a shared screen. We do not yet hear you. You may have to unmute your microphones.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, I'm just going to sort out this technical stuff. Just 1 second. Just gonna get my, okay, there we go. Alrighty, there we go. Thank you for everyone's patience. So good morning to everyone around the world. Gwen and I feel very privileged to be able to share our experiences and our perspectives today. So my name is Melinda Allen, and I am a supervisor for Deafblind Community Services. We call it DBCS. We've got a lot of acronyms coming your way in the Greater Toronto Area, which is in Ontario, Canada. So I am a graduate of the Intervenor program, which is the only program in North America for the education and training of interveners. After 2 years, course participants graduate with a diploma as interveners in the field of deafblindness. So I've been working in the field since I graduated in 2013. And since joining DBCS, I've held several roles. I've worked as an intervener, a literacy instructor, most recently as a scheduler, trainer, and community liaison. And now I've been in the supervisor position since April 1st of 2020. So quite an interesting time to step into a new role just 2 weeks after COVID hit Ontario. My co-host is Gwen Sheridan, and she is one of the managers for DBCS in I was just distracted by the chat. So she's one of the managers in our in the GTA for DBCS, and she also manages our provincial literacy program. So Gwen has been working in the field for 20 years, and she began her career as an intervener with people who are congenitally deafblind. And she's been with our organization for 17 years in a variety of roles, including intervener and literacy instructor. So we're going to begin our presentation with kind of a brief overview and introduction of our services that we provide at DBCS. And then we're going to share how we as an organization responded to COVID-19, what tools we used, how we supported clients and our staff, and just some of our thoughts for the future and our perspective kind of on the impact of COVID-19 to the community. So just some history. In the 1950s, so CNIB, which is the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, they supported groups for members of the deafblind community in Vancouver, Saskatoon, and Winnipeg. And then in 1975, CNIB officially established our Deafblind Services Department, and then we set to work providing intervener services over the next few years. And then in August of 2014, we launched our Emergency Intervener Services Program, which is in Ontario. And we're going to get into that a little bit later into the presentation, but essentially this program allows for clients to have 24/7 access to an intervener in emergency situations. So today, DBCS employs over 100 staff in Ontario. Our clients who used to only receive about 3 hours a week of intervener service can now access up to 24 hours a week. So this is a great success for the community, and deafblind leaders and organizations advocated over the years so that people could have communication through intervener services. So DBCS in Ontario provides support to over 250 people who have this dual sensory loss. So DBCS is one of 3 pillars found under the CNIB umbrella. And the other 2 pillars are the CNIB Foundation and Vision Loss Rehabilitation Canada, which I think is our third and final acronym, VLRC. So DBCS works in partnership with the Foundation and VLRC to change what it means to be blind and deafblind. So the CNIB Foundation provides recreational programming to those in the sight loss and deafblind community and provides powerful advocacy to tear down barriers to inclusion. VLRC provides independent living skills, orientation, mobility, as well as technology training. They also provide low vision assessments. And all these services are available to people who are blind, deafblind, or partially sighted. So a little bit about our intervener services. So we have a picture on the screen, and it's a picture of an intervener wearing a black shirt with brown hair. And they are seen providing information through tactile American Sign Language. to a client with gray hair and sunglasses. And the client is holding a mobility cane, and you can see the bush in the background behind them. So DBCS provides intervener services to the acquired deafblind community across Ontario. So our provincial government provides the funds for these services, and they're available to residents of Ontario who are over 18 years of age. As part of our national expansion into provinces that currently do not have services, we are pleased to say that the Saskatchewan government has recently provided funding for intervener services, and this is done in partnership with the Saskatchewan Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services. And this could not have been done without the leaders from the deafblind community and the advocacy efforts of DBCS. And of course, our goal is to provide services in each province across Canada. So a little bit about the role of the intervener in our organization. So the intervener facilitates communication, access, and participation in the community in a variety of settings, such as educational settings, employment, medical and legal settings. And intervener services are always directed by the client. Interveners with DBCS typically provide service to 2 clients a day. But as I mentioned earlier, clients can request up to 24 hours. We will talk about this a bit more, but the current pandemic has drastically changed the level of service that we're able to provide. Okay, so our literacy program is one of 3 programs that we have. So intervener services was the first one, and then literacy is funded through the Ministry of Labor, Training and Skill Development. And the literacy program provides one-on-one instruction to residents of Ontario who are 18 years of age. And the literacy program follows kind of 5 pathways surrounding the framework of find and use information, communicate ideas and information, digital technology, engaging with others, and manages learning. So the literacy program helps to support people in their goal towards attending post-secondary, gaining employment, or kind of relearning skills needed to continue employment after a sudden, loss in vision. And then the third goal path is independence. People just generally want to increase independence. And the classes are offered in the fully accessible classroom and are provided in the learner's communication method. Alrighty, so our third program in DBCS is the Emergency Intervener Services. So like I mentioned before, this is essentially that clients have 24/7 access to an intervener in an emergency situation. So any kind of unexpected, serious, dangerous, life-threatening situation, an intervener can be dispatched to provide communication. Also under the program, clients who are registered are provided with emergency communication kits. And so people typically keep this kit close to the front door. Sometimes they bring it with them when they go out just in case something happens. There's a little bit of communication book in there, large print notes and a pen and a paper, and a little alert that says, I require communications in an emergency, so please call this number, and that's how we get interveners dispatched. As well, the program covers a medic alert bracelet for people so that they can have identification on them that lets first responders know any health conditions or anything that they should know if they happen to be unconscious or something. And the program is also responsible for training first responders. So people, they get out and educate firefighters, paramedics, hospitals, and that sort of thing. Alrighty. So on March 16th, 2020, Ontario was declared to be in a state of emergency. So everything we knew about the way we provided service to our community was about to change. So the province gathered to understand what to do next. We quickly learned of a key term that would drive how we would move things forward. So that term was essential. So essential services to be conducted by essential workers. So what does essential mean exactly? So for the staff, it meant being one of the few people allowed outside their homes to provide service that was critical to preserving life, health, and basic societal functioning. So for the deafblind community, it meant the possibility of losing a considerable amount of interaction with the world around them, including access to information about the pandemic. So with the decrease of safe and allowable interaction across the province, deafblind people were facing increased isolation. People who were used to seeing an intervener 4 to 5 times a week were suddenly down to 1 to 2 visits. And even in those visits, the clients and interveners had to be in personal protective equipment, and they had to be in and out of these community locations as quickly as possible, or to maintain a distance of 6 feet. So the shift to essential services left service providers like us a huge task of determining need. So recommendations from the government about how to determine what was essential came with a lot of assumptions, assumptions about what essential meant for everybody. Does the client have a family? Do they have other supports that could help them during this time? But even if they do, shouldn't it still be an intervener assisting them rather than the family member? So was social intervention no longer essential because there was no kind of end goal, like picking up groceries or filling a prescription? And how are we kind of to determine that? So one of the biggest factors we had to consider was about the mental and emotional health and people who used our services, as well as the staff who were providing the services. So with all of this in mind, and all the policy changes that we were developing, reviewing, implementing, changing again, to align with the government and public health recommendations, we knew that the level of support that each individual, that we were to provide to each person was going to be very individual. So we are here to discuss what we did, what was successful, what was learned, and if, big if, knock on wood, we have to do this again one day, what are our plans? So some of the main areas we identified were around online tools. So one of our, so our literacy program very quickly got to work in developing health and wellness webinars. And any client of DBCS could join. So using Zoom, the health and wellness webinars were provided to clients across the province. Interpreters were hired for those that could access them visually. Interveners were booked virtually using various methods, such as the phone for voiceover, text messaging, FaceTime. So as each individual's communication method was so unique, we had to get pretty creative on how we were going to make these accessible. And for those that weren't able to join because of technology challenges or the communication method wouldn't work virtually, interveners were booked to go provide face-to-face service in their PPE, of course, personal protective equipment. Transcripts and recordings were made available to people if they weren't able to access the webinar in real time. And with a focus on the impact COVID-19 had on a person, a lot of the topics were focused on health and wellness. So we had topics such as home fitness tips, Reiki, nutrition, anger management, yoga, self-care, and healthy coping strategies. So for each session, a professional from the community in any of these areas, they graciously donated their time to support the effort to keep clients engaged and involved from a distance. So next was client social groups. So client social groups were quickly established to maintain the peer-to-peer social interaction that clients were involved in before the pandemic. So before COVID-19, clients were involved in many peer groups. Typically, you could, depending on your membership to any of them, you could be going out to one of these support groups once a week, a couple times a month. So there was a large gap that was missing in this peer-to-peer interaction. So the creation of these virtual peer groups allowed for clients to engage in the group settings that they were used to. And it created a space for people to participate in activities such as trivia, health and fitness, and DIY projects. Do it yourself. So as well, an online tool that we found was that virtual intervention shifts were booked when face-to-face services were not possible. So the shifts could involve just checking in, providing updates, reading the news, current events, what's going on with the pandemic today, or to do medical appointments, because a lot of doctors shifted to taking phone consultations or talking through prescriptions over the phone and that sort of thing. So we use virtual intervention to do tasks that we wouldn't normally be able to do because of the face-to-face interaction. As well, the pause in services provided an opportunity for members of the deafblind community to provide training to the staff. So clients were able to provide training and consultation to our staff on specific things that clients needed from us as service providers. So onto sector-specific training. So staff engaged in a variety of training during the time, the little bit of pause in services that we had. So we worked through American Sign Language classes. We had training and retraining in behavioral competencies, and that's a project that was funded by our ministry to identify the behavioral competencies or skills that a high quality intervener should exhibit. We were able to work with a community agency called Canadian Hearing Services, and they were able to include our staff in training that would normally be reserved for professional, for certified interpreters only. So we were able to join a lot of that training, and as well they facilitated a few workshops for us that we would need, such as virtual remote interpreting, which we're getting very used to now, and a talk on compassion fatigue. Staff also attended a pro-tactile training provided by a deafblind person who's also a staff member of our CNIB Foundation in Alberta. And that same person also provided a workshop to our staff on the principles of intervener services. And lastly, we had a workshop from our department that provides all of our materials for people with print disabilities. So that's the Center for Equitable Library Access, and they do all of the Braille books, they do the books on tape and that sort of thing. So lastly, in the online tools, we identified an increased need for focus on mental health and mindfulness during this time. So we found this focus to be very necessary to be able to support essential workers during this pandemic. Because not only were staff coping with working during a pandemic and, you know, providing a new type of service that was new, people were also coping with their own fears and challenges in their personal lives, right, regarding their safety, their families, and that sort of thing. So some of the mindfulness training that we participated in were meditation, mindfulness for stress management and mental clarity, mindset training, and neuro-linguistic programming, mindfulness meditation, so we kind of combined a few, emotional well-being. We had a focus on values and beliefs, yoga, and a session on work and home life balance. Okay, so our next focus was the impact on the community. So there's two graphics on the screen. The top photo shows an intervener with a black top and brown hair with her back to us, and she is providing tactile communication again to a deafblind person who has gray hair and a brown shirt. The second picture shows an intervener wearing a black shirt and a client wearing a white shirt riding a tandem bicycle. So what did the crisis mean for the community of deafblind people and interveners? So we quickly observed how important the need for physical touch was when clients were faced with a quick decrease in this physical contact. So the time with an intervener was designated only for taking care of their essential needs, and that meant a decrease in the touch that we know is important to all of us. And wearing the necessary PPE also impacted the benefits of this interaction. Alternatively, though, we saw a shift with clients who so heavily relied on touch to communicate and for safe travel become kind of somewhat afraid or confused as to what touch was acceptable, you know, through government standards. So some clients thought sitting in the back seat of an intervener's car works better than sitting in the front. Or people preferred to use a broom handle to create distance from their intervener rather than traditional sighted guide. So this created an interesting dynamic for providing in-person communication. So when interveners provided in-person communication, they were often met with resistance from the community, disapproving comments, or they were straight up challenged in a grocery store, for example, for not being able to maintain that social distance that had been instilled in everybody. So this was difficult on the client and the intervener, and potentially further isolated and contributed to their fears. And of course, the impact on PPE was challenging when providing in-person communication. We have masks that do not allow for visual ASL users to read facial expressions. We have face shields that create a glare, but they might work well for someone who relies on lip reading. None of it was perfect, but the clients and the interveners are still working through it one day at a time. So our emergency intervener services program continued to function throughout COVID. So the enhanced restrictions around how many people could be in a hospital or a medical setting, in a waiting room, that sort of thing, really created a challenge for our community. Hospital or medical staff and tried to prohibit the entry of an intervener into a medical situation. And so a lot of advocacy work was done by the client and the intervener in those situations to ensure that the clients didn't have their rights violated. So certainly our government had come to recognize interveners as essential workers and add them to policy and documentations and lists that we would see come out, but it hadn't fully made its way into hospitals and medical situations in that short time. So public education is still needed around that. So since March 16th, we have provided emergency services 14 times, and 2 of them were mental health related. So another of our focus was around the increased mental health challenges that clients might have been experiencing. So we saw a need for being able to get out and do physical activity with an intervener. So in the beginning, services were focused on getting the essentials done and getting back home. The clients were missing the huge benefits that outdoor physical activity could provide. So as restrictions started to ease and things became a bit safer, we understood the virus a little bit better, we were able to have interveners see clients for outside activities outside of errands. So some of these activities could have included getting out for a walk, sitting at a safe social distance in a client's driveway or backyard, maybe reading the news, or just getting a takeout coffee and taking it back home. So looking forward, as we look forward, what do we see the sector needs to focus on? What does the deafblind community need to see as a priority, and how do we achieve these goals? Of course, advocacy, right? So in Ontario, we do have a particularly supportive government. We have services in place, but we're still a long way from ensuring full access to the community. It wasn't until we were facing this pandemic that intervener services were recognized as essential in Ontario. So public education and awareness is and should continue to be the area of focus for our sector. So during this time, we have seen interveners and clients have to advocate to attend medical emergencies, advocate to ensure equal access to food services because we can't follow social distancing regulations. So ensuring that people aren't getting asked to leave the grocery store because their support person is less than 6 feet away. And seniors that have no access to communication because they live in a long-term care facility, which quickly locked down and refused to let visitors in for everyone's safety, of course. So we've done it. We've been creative. Members of the deafblind community have been resilient, but there's still a long way to go. So in terms of access to information, when COVID hit Ontario, there were no interpreters on the television for these provincial updates, right? So it took the deaf and deafblind communities to rally together for the government to provide the type of access. Eventually, we saw the interpreters appear on screen, and sure, there were some quirks in the beginning where the cameraman would pan away from the interpreter, but eventually we got on track. Internally, though, newsletters were created by DBCS staff with weekly information about COVID and other world events. They were hand-delivered to clients in their preferred reading medium, including large print or braille. Electronic newsletters were sent daily across the regions to clients with government public health information updates and other current events. As well, clients and interveners submitted entries to the newsletter, which helped everyone stay connected all around. So what have we learned that can benefit our future? So it's amazing to see how quickly we learned to use tools that might have been available to us for some time, but we had not been utilizing them to their fullest extent. I think most of us on this webinar are in the same boat on that. But moving forward, we as an organization will be implementing some of these tools that have been used during the pandemic. So for example, using virtual services with clients to supplement face-to-face services, using virtual tools when appropriate to reach clients that may be living in underserved areas to provide resources and support to them. We're also exploring the possibility of expanding our literacy services to people in rural areas using virtual services. During this time, we have also been able to contact other provinces and are providing training to volunteers out there and their staff to virtually help support clients who don't have access to intervener services just yet. So now that interveners are essential here in Ontario, we've been reflecting on all that we have learned over the past 3 months. We're much better equipped to support our clients and staff in the future. We're developing a pandemic plan. We have the PPE available should we need it, again, knock on wood, after this current situation. So we have more tools in our toolbox now to act quickly and have increased awareness around the very important needs of the deafblind community and the general population and with government officials. So we know the importance of continuing to provide mental health supports to our team of interveners so that they can continue to provide high quality services now and in the future. So in conclusion, that was a pretty brief overview of our services in Ontario, how COVID-19 has impacted our community of clients and interveners. So I know that there are questions in the chat now. We have essentially made the decision to save questions to the end, but here we are at the end. So I'm going to ask my co-host to get some of the questions rolling. And this is our contact information on the slide, and I believe the presentation is going to be shared on the website. So please feel free to reach out with any questions, comments, anything. All right.
Melinda, there's a question. Do deafblind people have intervener services plus interpreter services, or intervener services includes this?
So intervener services through Deafblind Community Services does include the facilitation of the communication, right? So if it really depends on the situation, but some of the time interveners do work with interpreters, right? So perhaps the interpreter is hired for the communication piece, but the intervener is there to support the environmental information or the visual information and that sort of thing. So we work together quite often, but interveners do have the ability to communicate the message with the client.
There is Kim Owen has just shared in a different session. There was a video of our deaf team in Norfolk, UK, for training young people to communicate when wearing a mask.
Oh,
so she's added the link for everybody on the webinar there.
Perfect.
And we can share this the presentation slides.
Mm-hmm.
And another question, what resources did you use to support your workshops for the mental health and mindfulness?
Gwen?
I hope I'm answering this correctly.
in terms of booking presenters, we went out to the community and booked professionals in these areas. There were interpreters present during our workshops. I hope that answers your question. In terms of the other mental health and wellness webinars, we used interpreters, interveners, various different communication methods.
Mm-hmm.
And Emma says, hi Melinda and Gwen, Emma from Kent County in the UK. Can I ask if you have time to set up peer support groups for clients to link in virtually during this time for social support? So please contact us and we could talk about that, Emma.
Yeah, that would be great.
And another question to ask about a link for the emergency kits. Please reach out to us and we can share some of those resources with you, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
And that is all of the questions.
All the questions, yep, awesome. Might pause for a minute to let more questions in. I think I was watching another webinar.
I find it very interesting when you were talking about how there's a process of change now in the skill set of the professionals. What I thought I should add here is that this is also something that is happening in the training environment. So for example, in our rehabilitation program in Montreal, telerehabilitation now has become part of the curriculum. I'm guessing that that will likely also happen in the training of interveners. Probably your intervener training program in Ontario will adapt and adopt some of the development. Do you know if that is already planned?
Gwen, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. It's certainly on the radar. I don't know if it's already planned, but it's definitely, like we said, we have found it to be very useful. So it's certainly, I certainly see that happening, yeah.
Yeah, I think you will become a really rich resource for the program from that perspective because you have this practical experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's Gwen speaking. For anyone who is interested in learning more about the emergency services and kits, Janine Tucker, our provincial lead for the emergency services program, has included her contact information in the chat.
Thank you, Janine.
And I'm going to move to our final slide, Melinda.
Oh, that's right, our final slide. So we, from Canada, look forward to welcoming the Deafblind International Conference in 2023. It's very exciting.
Yes, we are. Yeah, actually, I think it will be very fascinating how this will have unfolded by then. Whether the conference itself is actually going to unfold differently than we were used to. As a researcher, all my conferences that I was supposed to attend this year, of course, have all been canceled. Everybody has optimistically moved them to next summer. We'll see what that brings. I've attended a couple of online conferences, much like our webinar here, but not everything is equally successful. So much like, we have our technical difficulties here, there are accessibility difficulties, and we're just not used to it. Huh? So we need to learn this as well. And I wish all of us well for 2023.
Yes, nothing like being thrown into something to learn how to do it quickly.
Absolutely.
It will be interesting, it's Gwen speaking, to see 3 years from now, as we sit here and reflect this week on how, how we all adapted to the current situation in 3 years now, to see how different our perspective will be looking back when we all come together for the conference. Very exciting.
All right. I will gladly give you more time here if we have more questions. I always encourage people to take their time, clarify their thought before you type a question. I was actually looking at some research about this a while ago. When you ask a question to a room of people, you know, we're used to, yeah, I'm just, do we have any questions in the room? You actually have to give people a minimum of 16 seconds to work up the courage and the content of their question. And that's longer than you would think. 16 seconds is a lot of time. So I'm always glad when we have a little bit of time. I don't mind filling it with me rambling a little bit. There are more questions coming.
So yes, the emergency kit. So the emergency kit is a backpack with high contrast, you know, white and black, and it says DBCS emergency services or something to that effect on the bag. And it's inside there's a visor, so if there's a glare in the hospital, the fluorescent lights, that can help. There's also a communication book that is specific to that person's communication method. So it could be a book with graphics, and then there's the Braille page that is overlaid. It could be large print and that sort of thing, so that if the intervener is not there yet, the first responder with the client can kind of point to pictures or point to kind of symptoms, like where's the pain. There's also, I believe, a black marker and a notepad for writing large print notes back and forth. And then there's there's a variety of things. There's a key tag, or there's a little wallet thing that holds your ID or your credit card, and it says, "I need communication. Please call an intervener for this situation." I hope Janine will correct us in the chat if that's.
That is actually very, very interesting information. We had a presentation earlier this week about an emergency hospital kit that people have been developing in case deafblind clients have to go into the health setting on short notice. I'm going to try and tie together some of this information when I write up our summary of the seminar. So for those of you who do not know this, we have been received permission from the British Journal of Visual Impairment to write a summary on our webinar this week. And I'm working on that next week, where I'm trying to tie together some of the themes and the overlapping information that we got from the different countries. And I will definitely talk about these kits for sure.
I would also just like to include that our government has provided funding for people from the community for medical alerts. So they can choose to have their medical information as well as that they are deafblind. I'm sorry if you mentioned that, Melinda. So if they aren't able to communicate, they are able to show that bracelet and be able to reach out to our dispatch center for an intervener.
You have one more question that just came in on training with first responders. Very interesting question.
Yes, training has been done over the past 6 years with first responders. We have created videos as well that you can find on YouTube under CNIB Deafblind Services Emergency Services Program. And those videos are used when training first responders. So people from our team have gone out to train with police, hospital emergency rooms, fire departments, you know, and often though we're still doing advocacy, we may come across a situation or hear from a client that hasn't been given access to an intervener in a medical emergency. So the advocacy is ongoing, the training is ongoing, and we still have a lot of work to do. We've come a long way, but there's still a big piece we need to do around awareness and education.
Ladies, I am aware of the time. I want to give our interpreters their well-deserved break. Thank you very, very much for wisdom from Ontario, Canada. And we will all now go away and save lots of money so we can travel to Ontario in 2 years, 2.5 years. Excellent.
Thank you, Walter.
Yes, thank you so much.
And we will see everybody back here in 15 minutes on the full hour for our final presentation of the day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Information today, you will be okay because you will be able to go back to the website of Deafblind International and look it up again, look at the video, look at some of the information. As always, you know, we're dealing with technical glitches, but we will get there. You will see that we do have international sign language interpretation. Unfortunately, we were not able to find the funds or the volunteers for live captioning today, but we are working on that for events in the future. I thank our two interpreters, Robert and Bridget today. It is also because of them that I ask our presenters to respect the 45-minute time limit so they get their well-deserved breaks in between sessions. For those of you who are new to Zoom, there are some Zoom support documents available on the website of Deafblind International. And if you want to have access to a larger version of the image of the interpreter on the screen, you can go to the speaker view options in the top right corner. You can find side by side, and that will allow you to make the image of the interpreter larger. You will see that for most of our presentations today, we have two presenters. That is because one of them keeps one keen eye on what happens in the chat feature. And so we encourage all of you to use the chat feature to write comments and to ask questions. This way, the team will be able to answer and give you the necessary clarifications as we go forward. If you're on social media, I encourage you to share with the world what it is we're doing. And specifically, if you use Twitter, please use the hashtag DbI webinar. And you can always tag at DbI_connect to connect with Deafblind International. Now, our next presentation follows a pattern that we established earlier this week because it is going to be a bilingual presentation. We had a presentation earlier this week that was half in Portuguese, half in English. Today we switch, it'll be half in Spanish and in English. It's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to this. And so I welcome Eneida Guadalupe Rendon Nieblas and Marta Elena Ramirez Moguel for their presentation. The next 45 minutes, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Walter. I'm going only to facilitate this presentation, and Yvette Gallegos is going to interpret from Spanish to English. And we are going to introduce Eneida Rendon, who is the presenter. So I'm going to give her the word. Eneida, vamos a iniciar la presentación.
Ok. Buenos días, mi nombre es Neida Guadalupe.
Marta ha comenzado a compartir. Modo de voz desactivado.
¿Listo?
Y listo, ya estamos viendo la pantalla.
Ok, thank you. Buenos días, mi nombre es Eneida Guadalupe. Ivette, ¿nos escucha?
Tenemos un poquito de problemas porque Ivette no se escucha. Espérame un momentitito. Okay, tú lleva el chat. Okay, I'm going to translate, and Yvette is going to have the chat. So, hi, good morning. I'm Eneida Guadalupe Rendón Nieblas. Sigue, Eneida. Listo.
Okay. Estoy muy contenta de compartir con ustedes.
I'm very happy to share with you.
Para mí es una experiencia muy nueva y me imagino que para muchos de nosotros.
For me, it's a new experience, and I imagine it's the same to a lot of us.
Y bueno, agradezco a quienes me acompañan, la maestra Yvette en la traducción y maestra Marta Elena en la presentación de las diapositivas.
I'm grateful with Yvette Gallegos in the translation, but it's me now, and Marta Elena Ramirez with the chat.
Vamos a iniciar con la conferencia La sordoceguera en tiempos de pandemia, reflexiones de experiencias obtenidas.
We are going to begin the presentation, Deafblindness in Time of Pandemic, Reflection of Experiences.
Siguiente. Yo deseo compartir experiencias.
I want to share with you experiences
que hemos vivido las personas sordociegas y nuestras familias.
That we live, a person with deafblindness and our families.
En México durante estos meses de confinamiento.
In Mexico during these months of confinement.
Podemos ver cómo dos personas se están tomando de la mano.
We can see two people hand by hand.
Lo que es una de nuestras preocupaciones al realizarse la comunicación mano a mano.
This is one of our concernings about making communication hand by hand.
Siguiente. Haciendo un análisis de las medidas de prevención.
Making an analysis of prevention measures.
Hacia las personas con discapacidad.
To the persons with disabilities.
Tenemos que la Organización Mundial de la Salud.
We have that World Health Organization.
Menciona las medidas que ya todos conocemos.
Mention the things we have to care that we all know.
Okay. Pero no ofrece alternativas de comunicación para las personas con sordoceguera.
But they don't offer some precautions for the people with disabilities and deafblindness, sorry.
Organizaciones nacionales, tanto internacionales,
organizations, national organizations and international ones,
que abogan por las personas con discapacidad,
advocating for people with disabilities,
comienzan a ofrecer información
began to offer information
y pedir que se les tome en cuenta.
and asking for them to be considered.
Un ejemplo es la Red Latinoamericana de Personas con Discapacidad y sus familias.
An example for that is the network of Latin American people with disabilities and their families.
que publicó el 10 de abril un video de lengua de señas internacional.
That published on April 10th a international sign language video with information on the subject.
Siguiente. Bueno, hablando de la situación en México.
Talking about the situation in Mexico.
El gobierno de México.
Mexico government.
Nos presenta un video en lengua de señas.
Present of us a video with sign language.
El 24 de marzo.
On March 24th.
En donde solo nos muestra indicaciones generales.
That only give us general indications.
El Instituto de las Personas con Discapacidad de Ciudad de México.
The Institute of People with Disabilities of Mexico City.
Ofrece una guía de atención y prevención por el COVID-19.
Offer a guide for care and protection for COVID-19.
En donde no menciona a las personas con sordoceguera ni discapacidad múltiple.
And there is no mention for people with deafblindness and multiple disabilities.
Se lanzan encuestas para conocer la situación de las personas con discapacidad.
They do surveys from people with disabilities to know the situation.
En los tipos de discapacidad no se menciona a la sordoceguera.
But it mentions some types of disabilities, but not deafblindness.
Sí nos ponen un cuadro de otros en la que podemos especificar.
¿Me repites, porfa, Zeneida?
Sí nos colocan un cuadro de otros en la que podemos especificar.
How they only put like a place named others that we can specify the deafblindness.
Okay. Siguiente. Se han hecho muchos esfuerzos en México.
There are a lot of efforts in Mexico.
Bueno, entre los cuales podemos ver que diferentes asociaciones.
We can see that different organizations.
Como SEMDIS y ASOMAS en conjunto con Perkins.
Like ASOMAS and SEMDIS in conjunction with Perkins International.
Nos presentan infografías con información.
Present of us infographics with information.
Para las familias de niños y jóvenes con sordoceguera.
To orientate families with children and young with deafblindness.
El colectivo de personas con sordoceguera.
Deafblindness group of people.
Intenta informar a su comunidad sobre lo que está pasando.
Intend to inform their community about what is happening.
Sí. Y bueno, otra asociación se llama Segunda Mirada.
And another organizations named Segunda Mirada, it's like second eye.
intenta retomar actividades por internet,
tries to reinstallate activities virtually,
en donde la participación de personas sordociegas es muy baja,
the participation of deaf people is very low
debido a la falta de recursos tecnológicos o guías intérpretes.
because of the absence of technological devices or interpreter guides.
Siguiente. Bueno, hablando del confinamiento y la sordoceguera,
Talking about confinement and deafblindness,
me gustaría repetir la siguiente frase.
I like to say this phrase.
¿Sabía usted que en el mundo existimos personas que vivimos en aislamiento y en cuarentena todo el año, todo el tiempo, muchos años y algunos hasta toda la vida?
Did you know that in the world there are people who live in isolation and in quarantine all year, all the time, many years, and some even for life?
Esta frase de Samuel Valencia me hizo recordar
This phrase of Samuel Valencia makes me remember
una parte de mi vida en la que hubo muchísimos cambios.
One part of my life that I have a lot of changes.
En esos momentos yo vivía con sordoceguera total.
In that moment, I lived with total deafblindness.
Y no contaba con computadora ni línea braille para poderme comunicar.
And I didn't have any computer or braille display to communicate.
Me hizo pensar en lo que estaría pasando las personas con sordoceguera en esta cuarentena.
And I think about what the people with total deafblindness are going on in this quarantine, or living in this quarantine.
Okay. Siguiente. Y preguntarme cómo podemos comunicarnos cuando la comunicación es solo mano a mano.
And ask me, how do we communicate while with the people who needs a hand-by-hand communication?
Ya que, como sabemos, la comunicación, dependiendo del grado de sordoceguera,
because as we know, the communication depends on the grade of deafblindness.
Solo puede darse mano a mano o en campos visuales muy reducidos.
Only can give as a hand-by-hand communication or in as nearest near the person, very near of the person.
La utilización de guantes puede ser una opción.
We could use gloves. It could be an option.
Para favorecer la comunicación.
To have communication.
Siguiente. Y también me pregunté qué tanta información llega a las personas con sordoceguera.
And then I asked to me how much information reaches to deafblind people.
Para esto platiqué con José de Jesús,
And I conversed with José de Jesús,
quien nos cuenta que sí se puede salir a la calle con cuidado y con cubrebocas.
He told us that yes, you can go outside with care and clothes in your mouth.
Nos dice que ahorita no puede salir de paseo.
He says that now he cannot go for a walk.
Y que espera que esto pronto sea posible. Por lo pronto hay que tener paciencia.
And that he hopes that soon it will be possible, that for now you have to be patient.
José de Jesús tiene síndrome de Usher y sordoceguera total.
José de Jesús has Usher syndrome and total deafblindness.
Okay. Y es casado.
He is married.
Su esposa es sorda.
His wife is deaf.
Tiene 3 hijos.
And he has 3 children.
Diariamente su esposa e hijos salen a trabajar.
Every day, her wife and sons go to work.
Él se dedica a las actividades del hogar.
And he does homework, home activities.
Participa en actividades sociales.
He participates in social activities.
Le gusta salir a pasear con su familia.
And he likes to go for a walk with his family.
Y pues ahora solo puede participar de las actividades de segunda mirada.
And he only can participate in the activities of the organization Segunda Mirada.
El sábado.
Saturdays.
Porque es el único día que su esposa puede ayudarle.
Because it's the only day that his wife can help him.
Piensa que el cubrebocas es la única protección.
He thinks that the face mask is the only protection.
Y se enteran de lo que está pasando por lo que dicen las demás personas.
And he knows what is going on because of the things that the other people told him.
Pero es una persona positiva.
But he is a positive person.
Y a continuación podemos verlo reflejado en un mensaje que nos deja.
We're gonna see a message that he gave to us.
¿Okay? ¿Hacemos el video?
Sí, pongo el video. Hello, I'm staying at home, as always, in my space. We have to take good care of ourselves. I'm patient. Bye, greetings, be well. Listo, Eneida.
Okay. Bueno, siguiente. Ahora pasamos a la educación de niños y jóvenes con sordoceguera.
Then we are going to talk about education for children and youth with deafblindness.
Aquí en México hay muchos esfuerzos por parte de los padres de familia.
Here in Mexico, there are a lot of efforts from parents.
Aunque en ocasiones se siente el deseo o la necesidad de regresar a la presencialidad.
But sometimes they feel the necessity to return to normality.
Ella es Grecia.
She is Grecia.
Una niña de 2 años con sordoceguera.
We are seeing some pictures in the screen of children with 2 years with deafblindness.
Aprende desde casa gracias al apoyo de su mamá.
She's learning at home with her mother's support.
Y a las actividades que le envían las instituciones.
And some activities that institutions sent to her.
Sin embargo, su madre comenta
Although her mother comments
que en ocasiones la niña se rehúsa a trabajar con ella.
That sometimes the child does not want to work with her.
Que siente que necesita el contacto de otras personas.
She feels that the girl needs the contact with other people.
Y que le gustaría poder tener una guía.
And they would want to have a guide
de los profesionales también presencial.
From the professionals in a presence way.
Los esfuerzos de las instituciones también son muchos.
There are a lot of efforts from institutions.
E intentan dar seguimiento a través de Internet.
And they intend to follow up by Internet way.
Sin embargo, hay ocasiones en que las familias no cuentan con los recursos tecnológicos suficientes.
But occasionally, the families don't have the technology issues enough to do it.
Siguiente. Y como podemos observar, tiene sus ventajas y desventajas.
As we can observe, there are advantages and disadvantages.
Entre sus ventajas, de manera personal, he podido descubrir
about the advantages in a personal way, I could discover
aplicaciones que favorecen independencia.
some applications that promote independence.
Como por ejemplo, aquellas donde puedo realizar pagos.
For example, the ones that allowed me to make payments.
También en lo personal, ahorro por transporte de traslado al trabajo.
And I save money in transportation to my work.
Se ve un acercamiento familiar de manera general.
We can observe some families are getting closer.
Las familias se han involucrado más en el trabajo con sus hijos.
Families involved more in the work with their children.
Y entre las desventajas,
and some disadvantages,
encuentro de manera personal que no todas las páginas
I found that not all the pages,
por ejemplo, de compras,
for example, to make shopping,
son accesibles.
are accessible.
No con todo, no cuento con todo el equipo tecnológico
I don't have all the technology equipment
para realizar mi trabajo desde casa.
to make my work from home.
Por ejemplo, ahorita no puedo dar servicio de impresión.
For example, I cannot give a printer service
De impresión en braille. Okay.
in Braille.
Ok. Otra desventaja, de manera general, los niños y jóvenes que lleguen a rehusarse a trabajar con sus familias.
Another disadvantage is that some children and youth refuse to work with families.
Que las personas con sordoceguera no cuentan con la tecnología adaptada.
And some people with deafblindness has not technology to use.
Como la línea braille.
As Braille display.
Okay. También se ve una mayor dificultad para contar con guías intérpretes.
And we have also more difficulty to have a guide interpreter.
Okay. Siguiente. Y bueno, como vemos, como pasa en toda actividad.
As we see, like in all activities,
existen ventajas y desventajas.
We have advantages and disadvantages.
La tecnología permite que nuestra voz llegue más lejos.
Technology enables our voice to go further.
Sobre todo si contamos con ella.
And emphasizing if we count with that.
Es por eso que pienso que se requiere que el conocimiento.
So I think that it's required that knowledge.
Y los distintos dispositivos tecnológicos.
And the technology devices.
Puedan llegar a más personas con sordoceguera.
Reach more people with deafblindness.
Y quisiera que todos nos hagamos las siguientes preguntas.
And I want that all of us make us these questions.
Cuando regresemos a la normalidad.
When we reach the new normality.
¿Será mejor para las personas con sordoceguera?
Will it be better for people with this deafblindness?
¿Habremos aprendido algo que permita un mundo mejor para todos?
Have we learned something that allows a better world for everyone?
Nosotros deseamos unirnos.
We want to join.
Trabajar en conjunto.
Work together.
Volvernos a encontrar.
Find us again.
Y esperamos que esto pueda pasar.
And we hope that this go away.
Esperamos que sí podamos construir un mundo mejor.
We hope that we could build a better world
Para los niños y jóvenes con sordoceguera.
for children and youth with deafblindness.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias, Eneida. Gracias, Marta.
Thank you.
So now we are going to see some questions about the chat. We have like a problem, technology problem, because Yvette Gallegos, she is the one who we're going to do the translation, but she has technology problems, so I did that. So now she's going at charge of the chat. So we have to wait a little bit. Eneida, estoy explicando que Ivette iba a ser la que iba a traducir, pero no se pudo conectar, por eso traduje yo. Entonces ahora espero que ella me dé las preguntas del chat.
Se cae.
Nos dicen que estas a ver. Me pregunta si encontré alguna aplicación para leer el texto. If I found some applications to read text. Dice que hay algunas aplicaciones para leer texto en español. Te preguntan, Eneida, me parece que esta pregunta va para ti. Si tú tienes algunas aplicaciones para leer el texto en español, ¿cómo lees las traducciones?
Yes. El programa NVDA.
Espera un tantito.
N de niño, B chiquita, D de dedo, A.
NBA, ajá. So the question is if she can read some text in Spanish and some applications to read it. And she says that there is an application named NUVA.
Tiene un complemento que permite hacer las traducciones.
Have like a complement that allows to make translations.
Pero bueno, una de mis tareas es aprender inglés.
But one of my things to do is to learn to speak English. Dice otro de los comentarios es muy complicado el confinamiento y muy cierto todo lo que comenta Eneida. Para mi hija y para mí ha sido un reto porque no la he podido llevar a terapias y yo aún no estoy preparada al 100% para enseñarle a ella todo lo que necesita. Y eso ha hecho que mi hija tenga un retraso importante. Gracias, Eneida, por la información. Eso lo comenta Alma Cortés. Okay? Lo voy a decir en inglés. Alma Cortés said that is complicated about the confinement, and it's true what Eneida says, that for her children and for her is very complicated, and she could not take Grecia to the therapist. So, and she says that she is not yet prepared enough to attend her children.
Gracias,
And thank you to Eneida. Sí, Eneida.
Sí, gracias, Arma. Sí, justo es una de las dificultades que estamos pasando, sobre todo con los niños pequeños.
Yes, that's difficult. We are going through with the young children.
Y que bueno, estamos tratando de resolver con el seguimiento virtual por las instituciones.
And we are trying to resolve it through virtually follow-up. Ok, pues no sé si haya, ya no hay ninguna otra pregunta ni comentario, Eneida.
Okay.
I think there is all the questions. There are not more.
Thank you so much, Marta and Eneida. It has been a pleasure meeting you, and it has been a pleasure to listen to you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Ha sido un placer escucharlos, dice Walter.
¿Cómo?
Walter dice que ha sido un placer escucharte.
Thank you. Pues esto es un poco de lo que podemos compartir y gracias a DbI por la oportunidad.
This is a little bit that we can share, and thank you, DbI, for the opportunity.
Thank you. It's much appreciated.
Lo
So
aprecio.
I will close our session for today. I am very excited, looking forward to tomorrow, and I hope to see you all at 6 o'clock tomorrow, my time, on my tiny little computer screen. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Gracias y nos espera ver mañana a las 6.
Gracias. Thank you.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Bye.